Welcome to Dark Psychology World Channel. I hope you like it. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you. Now I will start reading this book to you. How to Analyze People. 13 Laws about the Manipulation of the Human Mind. 7 Strategies to quickly figure out body language. Dive into dark psychology and persuasion for making people do what you want. Introduction. Have you ever walked into a confrontation feeling so sure of yourself, then walk out feeling confused, but with no valid reason why you would be convinced by the other person? Have you ever walked out of a conversation agreeing to do something for someone, but could not identify why you agreed to it in the first place? Chances are you've manipulated, whether by playing on your emotions or through persuasive words. You were brought to believe in or act on something that you were not entirely agreeable to. Initially, you could be utterly convinced and so sure of yourself before you begin the conversation, but midway you found yourself at a loss for words, confused, frazzled, and disoriented. Manipulation can feel like you are being controlled and leave you doubting your own abilities. Being manipulated constantly can leave you frustrated, demoralized, and despondent, wondering how you didn't see this coming. Could you have prevented it though? If you knew just how to analyze the signs that indicate someone may be up to no good. Manipulators exercise their influence by exploiting your emotions and distorting your mental perceptions to control and gain benefits from you. They prey on your weaknesses and take advantage of you through communication strategies designed to distract you enough that you don't see what they're up to until it's too late. It is important to identify whether you are being manipulated, to protect yourself from being taken advantage of, and facilitate a healthy balance of power in relationships. And it begins by learning how to analyze people. One of the other ways to tell whether you are being manipulated is through body language. The powerful, unspoken, and subtle cues that speak volumes when you know what to look out for. By recognizing the gestures, postures, and facial expressions emitted, one can identify and understand the complete message of what someone is trying or trying not to say. Learning how to analyze another can yield some fascinating revelations, and more importantly, open your eyes to the signs that you may be taken advantage, so you can take the steps to prevent or stop the advances completely. Thanks for picking our books. Know that we are aware that there are plenty of reading materials for the same subject, and we try to get you the most information you can use every day. 13 Laws of Manipulation. Would you believe that at every waking moment of your life, your mind is being manipulated or controlled in one way or another? Not necessarily always by someone you know either. Social media, online news content, the things you see and hear in traditional advertisements, conversations we see and hear at work or in our personal lives. There are all some form of manipulation or mind control. And most of the time, it's happening without you even realizing it. Even what you are about to read throughout the next chapters in this book could be a form of manipulation that influences your thoughts to a certain extent. Why, though, is the human mind so susceptible to manipulation? Could it be that our mind is full of what is known as loopholes? Let's take a look at the Solomon Asch experiment, which was conducted in 1957. This experiment on conformity was carried out by Asch in a series of psychological tests to reveal the degree to which an individual's opinions could be influenced by that of a group of people. The results Asch discovered were that with the right amount of peer pressure, people were willing to ignore the facts or reality that was in front of them, and resort to giving a false or incorrect response, just to conform to the rest of the group. Before that, here's a quick question. Do you see yourself as someone who is a nonconformist or a conformist? Most people believe that they can be just the right amount of nonconformist to stand up against others when they know they are right about something. A conformist, however, would prefer to blend in with the group, while most tend to believe they're not conformist. Research would suggest otherwise, and that people might be more prone to conformity than they initially think. Here's a quick test. Imagine you are now part of a psychology experiment with a group of several other people. Everyone is taking the same test, where you're shown a series of oddly shaped images and asked what you can see. When you look at the image, on some occasions, some participants unanimously declare they can see the exact same image. But when you look at the picture, you are seeing something entirely different. You are the only one who is seeing it too. Every other participant in the room has the same unified answer. What would you do? Do you stand by what you can see? Or do you go ahead and declare the same answer the other participants are giving? That's precisely what the Asch conformity experiments aim to discover. Conformity, which is a person's tendency to go along with the unspoken behavior or rules of a social group that they are part of. Asch set out to discover with his experiments if people could be pressured into conforming, even if they knew that everyone else in the group was wrong. Asch's main purpose of his experiment was to demonstrate just how powerful conformity could be in a group. When Asch carried out his experiment, there were participants who were in on what was going on and pretending to be like all the other participants, along with those who were really unaware of what was taking place. Those who knew what was going on would behave in certain ways, and the aim was to see if their behavior was going to have any influence on the other participants. In each experiment that was carried out, there would be one naive participant who was placed with a group of the were participants. There were 50 participants in the group, and everyone was told they would be taking part in some sort of vision test. In the vision test, those who were aware of what was going on were already told what their responses were going to be for the task that was presented. The naive participant had no clue that they were the only ones who were blissfully unaware. All the participants were given a lying task, and each one had to announce verbally which lying was the closest match to the target lying. They were given a total of 18. Various trials were carried out, and the participants who were aware have incorrect answers for 12 out of the 18 trials. Asch wanted to determine if the naive participants would change their responses to conform to how everyone else responded. Everything was going well during the first half of the trials, with the aware responded answering the questions being given correctly. However, they later began providing incorrect answers, just as they were instructed to by the experimenters. The results. Interestingly enough, at the end of the Asch experiment, it was revealed that 75% of those who took part in the conformity experiment went along with the answers from the rest of the group at least once. When all the trials were combined, Asch discovered that the naive participants conformed to the group's incorrect answer approximately 1/3 of the time. To determine that the participants could in fact actually gauge the correct length of these lines they were given during the vision test, each participant was asked to write the correct match individually. Based on the results, The participants' judgments were accurate, with the right answer being chosen 98% of the time. Ash's experiment also looked at how much effect the number of people who were present within a group could influence conformity. When there was only one other participant present, it had no impact on a participant's answer. When there were two participants present, their answers had a tiny effect on the naive participant's answer. In the presence of three or more participants, there was a significant difference in the answers provided by the naive participant. Ash also discovered that having one aware participant provide the right answer, while the rest of the aware participants gave incorrect answers, dramatically lowered the level of conformity experienced with only 5% to 10% of the participants going along with the other members of the group. Studies which were carried out later on have also supported Ash's findings, which then suggests that when it comes to conformity, social support was an important element that needed to be present. When the naive participants were questioned later on why they chose to go along with the rest of the group even though they knew the answers were wrong, most responded with, although they knew everyone else was wrong. They didn't want to put themselves at risk of being ridiculed. A few of the participants believed that the rest of the group had the right answers, and they were the ones who were all. The findings of Ash's experiment reveals the truth about conformity, which is that it is, in fact, influenced by both a belief that other people could be smarter or more informed, and a desire to fit in with the rest of the group. This loophole, then, is where the human mind thus becomes susceptible to manipulation. Why do we form? For those who understand how the human mind works, it then becomes so easy to take full advantage of the leverage that they have. Using this knowledge to their benefit, they can easily influence all the other unsuspecting individuals with just a few well-placed words or simple commands. Manipulation easily puts you in a position of power. When you play on someone else's emotions, the easiest target, if you could someone convince another and make them believe that in doing what you want them to, they will be happy. They'll be more than willing to bend to your rules. If you make them feel guilty enough, they'll try and do what they can to fix the situation. Even playing on someone else's fear makes them an easy target. Make them believe they're in danger of losing something they cannot afford to lose, and they'll jump at any opportunity that's presented to them. If your supervisor were to dangle the possibility in front of you that you might lose your job, wouldn't that fear spur you into doing whatever request they ask of you? Emotions make manipulation so easy. Ash conducted even further experiments and discovered that the reasons we become susceptible more to conforming when there are more people present, when the task is more difficult, and we are faced with uncertainty, we then tend to confirm when we believe others might be better informed than we are on the subject. When we view others in a group as having more power or influence. Ash did discover, though, that the power of conformity does decrease when the participants were able to respond individually or privately away from others. Further research does show that less conformity takes place if the person in question has at least one other person within the group that supports their point of view. The 13 laws of manipulation. Manipulators can come in all shapes and sizes, as different as they may be as individuals. There are certain things that manipulators have in common with each other, and that is the fact that they're sneaky, deceptive, and underhanded, and will resort to using any tactic if it means they get what they want. At the end of the day, they care little about your feelings or anyone else's. For that matter, even the people they love. The only thing that matters is them. Is their own agenda and getting what they want. Manipulators resort to one, two, or several tactics to achieve their goals, always at someone else's expense. While the tactics may vary from one manipulator to the next, there are 13 laws of manipulation that every manipulator will use at one time. Or another law: 1. Hide your intentions. Lying is perhaps the oldest and most effective form of manipulation around. Manipulators often resort to this tactic when they try to avoid responsibility or twist to the truth for their benefit. Some manipulators even resort of lying when there is no real reason to do so, simply thriving on the pleasure of creating chaos or the knowledge that they're playing with someone else's feelings. A skilled manipulator knows how to work this angle so subtly that you don't even realize the lie that they spin until it's too late. There could be several reasons why a manipulator resorts to lying. It could be to take advantage of another, to conceal their true intentions so you don't know what they're up to, or perhaps even to level the playing field so they can remain one step ahead of you. An employee who was concerned about their job might approach the boss and ask about the possibility of being laid off or fired. The boss, in an attempt to conceal what's really going on, might tell the employee there's nothing to be worried about, when in fact, plans were already being made to replace him once he has completed work on the project he was assigned to. A colleague who has been eyeing that same promotion you are might withhold potential information so that they could put themselves ahead of you. Law 2. The tension seeking. A little bit of drama in life keeps things interesting, but for a manipulator, drama happens all too frequently. Why? Because they created it on purpose. Manipulators like being the center of attention to validate themselves and give their egos the confidence boost they believe they need. A colleague at work might resort to creating conflict between colleague A and B by telling tales to each of them about the other. This thereby ensures that while colleague A and B are at odds with each other, they then turn to the manipulator for comfort, which then makes the manipulator feel important. In a relationship, one partner could constantly pick a fight to ensure that the other's attention is continually focused on them and trying to resolve a problem which may not exist. Law 3 is behaving emotionally. Manipulators could be highly emotional individuals, prone to dramatic or even hysterical outbursts when they want things done their way. Melodramatic, loud, obnoxious, over the top. Even at the slightest provocation, a manipulator will resort of emotional behavior, which is most of the time inappropriate. In a social setting, a couple loudly arguing in the restaurant because one partner is behaving unreasonably when things have not done their way, resorts to this behavior, hoping their partner might be embarrassed enough to give in to their demands. Makes this an extremely effective manipulation technique when used correctly. Lawford playing victim. Everyone always feels sorry for them. They seem to have the worst luck in the world. No matter what problem you may be having, they find a way to make you feel guilty for even talking about it by pointing out how their problem is 10 times worse than yours. We all suffer from a stroke of bad luck every now and then, but the manipulator has managed to skillfully use that unlucky streak to elevate their own victim status and put themselves above everyone else. A friend who constantly plays up all the negative aspects of their life while dismissing your problems is resorting to this manipulative tactic to get the attention they want. Tell them you had a bad day because you had a flat tire on your way to work this morning, and they'll tell you how you could be lucky you even have a car to complain about, while they have to endure the hardships of public transportation. Manipulators resort to this emotionally draining tactic to gain sympathy from others, which is another way of seeking attention and making sure that everyone is focused on them. Law number 5: taking credit where it's not due. Manipulators have no qualms about getting you to do most of the legwork and then swooping in at the last minute to take credit, like they have done the lion's share of the job. A common tactic which is often used in a professional setting, especially in group projects or teamwork. These crafty manipulators flit around delegating jobs, seemingly appearing busy, when in fact they're not really doing anything at all. But when it comes time to take credit, they have no problems about pushing you aside and taking credit for the ideas and the work that you've put in. Law 6: depend on me. Manipulators want you to feel like you need them in your life, that you simply cannot live without them. In a social setting, they're the popular ones whom everyone else seems to flock to, making you desperate to want to be a part of that group. In a relationship, they could be the partners that constantly reminds you, what would you do without me? Or how would you survive without me? They give you favors and help you out at a time when you need it most, making you feel indebted to them, so they can come and cash in on these favors at a later date. Manipulators create this false belief that you need them in your life, because the more you depend on them, the more control they have over you, which is exactly what they want. They prey on the vulnerable and make themselves the indispensable friend in your life, basking in this special status they have created. The more you lean on them for support, the more opportunities they have to prey on your emotions and exploit you for their own advantage. Law 7: selective honesty. Have you ever felt so disarmed by how a generous person you know could suddenly turn around and stab you in the back? Or felt so wrong-footed when you realized you only knew half of what was going on? That's because the person who was feeding you with information was a manipulator. And the reason you feel stabbed in the back or wrong-footed is that they only fed you information that they wanted you to know, while purposely withholding the rest. Selective honesty. A powerful manipulative tactic that can be used to disarm an unsuspecting victim. A tactic which is today very prominent within professional settings especially. Manipulators that work use it all the time to get ahead. If there are 5 people up for the same promotion at work, the manipulator will try to give themselves the upper hand by withholding important information that they know, while simultaneously assuring everyone else that this is exactly what is going on. They lead you to believe that they are being generous by cluing you in on what's taking place. But in reality, they're making sure you are at least 2 steps behind them every step of the way. Law 8: pretending to be a friend. Don't be fooled by the overly friendly person you just met on your first day at the office. They could be pretending to be your friend while gathering information about you, which they could later use to their advantage. While some people may genuinely be friendly, start to raise the red flag if this person is being a little too friendly by asking very personal or probing questions, especially if you've only just met them. This tactic is prominent within a professional setting, and if your gut is telling you something is off, it probably is. The manipulator could even exist within your own circle of friends. They pretend to be your friend by subtly being the one who is in control of the conversation. The conversation will always be what they dictate it should be. And it will only happen when they determine it should happen. This friend might also pressure you into making decisions by giving you very little time to think about it. Phrases like, if I'm really your friend, you'll do this for me, roll off the tongue of the manipulator too easily and always for their benefit. Law 9. Non-committal. Do you know anyone in your life who has a hard time committing to anything, even after you've told them how important it is and that you could use their support right now? The non-committal individual is no friend of yours. They're a manipulator. They take pleasure in withholding their approval or support if it means there's an opportunity for them to give themselves the upper hand, to control the situation for their benefit. They're only looking out for themselves, and they will especially refrain from committing to anything if it means having to assume responsibility. Being non-committal is a manipulation tactic, often used in romantic relationships. When a romantic partner is being non-committal, it keeps the other on their toes and keeps them coming back for more, thereby giving the manipulator the upper hand. The longer they withhold their commitment, the more bending over backward you'll be willing to do, just to get their approval. Loudon playing dumb. Is that colleague you know genuinely unaware of what's going on? Or are they feigning innocence to avoid taking on extra responsibility? Playing dumb is a manipulative tactic that often goes overlooked. But if you pay close attention, you'll find it apparent within a lot of professional settings. If you a leader of the group project at work, would you assign extra responsibility to that one team member who wasn't assured of something? Or assign that extra responsibility to another? The employee who was then playing dumb gets away with doing far less, but getting the same amount of recognition as everyone else in the group. When there's a conflict between a group of friends, could that one friend who doesn't know what's going on be telling the truth? Or could they be feigning innocence, knowing full well they were responsible for instigating the conflict in the first place? In a romantic relationship, could your partner, who doesn't know what you're talking about, be telling the truth when you confront them about an issue? Or could they be playing dumb to avoid being caught in a lie? Sometimes the innocent party may not be so innocent after all. Law 11. Pointing the finger at others. A manipulator will always try to keep their hands clean by first never assuming responsibility, and secondly, by always trying to point the finger at someone else, so they get off scot-free whenever there is a problem, especially when that problem could potentially jeopardize their reputation and expose them for who they are. If you know anyone in your family, friends, or even among your colleagues who always blames the problem on anything and anyone but themselves, you could be dealing with a manipulator. Keep a lookout for anyone whose the pattern of behavior involves always making someone else the scapegoat. Law 12. Telling you what you want to hear. It's hard not to feel good when you're being flattered, and you're more inclined to like the persons who's doing all the flattering more than others. If there's one person in your life who's always telling you all the things you want to hear, wouldn't you be more inclined to want to follow them or spend more time with them? It's hard not to feel good around people like these. But telling you all the things you want to hear is not necessarily the sign of a good friend. They could be buttering you up so they can cash in on a big favor at a later date, which you'll be guilt into helping them with because they've been so nice to you. Law 13. Controlling your decisions. A classic setting when manipulation in the form of controlling another's decision is present is within a romantic relationship. While it is Perfectly normal for you to base or change your decisions because of your partner. Is it because there exists within you a genuine desire to make them happy? Or are you doing it because you don't want to risk making them angry? There's a very fine line between what constitutes manipulation in a relationship. If you find yourself canceling plans far too often with friends because your partner expresses their displeasure or makes you feel bad, that's manipulation in play. If you refrain from wearing clothes that your partner dislikes, or stop yourself from getting a haircut because your partner said they don't like short hair, that's a subtle form of manipulation. They're controlling your decisions without making it seem obvious that they are. It could start off innocently, enough with a remark or two, but something so minimal like expressing how the clothes you are wearing does not look good on you, or the kind of dress you are wearing should be something else. And suddenly you find that your life has turned into nothing but decisions that don't make you happy, because they're being dictated by someone who supposedly loves you. The ethics of manipulation. Is it possible manipulation could be both good and bad? Mention the word manipulation, and what immediately springs to mind is the negative connotations which are associated with this term. Manipulation means deceit. Manipulation means using unscrupulous and underhanded tactics to take advantage of someone else. Manipulation means fraud and outright lying. Manipulation is unethical. The term has certainly got a bad reputation over the years, and even the phrases used to describe manipulation and play paint a picture that is fairly ugly or unpleasant. She's got him completely wrapped around her little finger. I told my boss exactly what he wanted to hear. He's got a reputation for being a heartbreaker. I talked my friend into doing what I wanted. These typical examples of manipulation certainly don't put a positive spin on the situation for both parties involved in the process. It makes the manipulator out to be someone who is selfish, self-serving, deceitful, and unconcerned about using someone else for their own advantage. And it makes the one who is being manipulated seem foolish, clueless, and possibly even weak of character for allowing themselves to be fooled so easily. Manipulation has always been viewed as an act that is ruthless, clever, yet cunning, and always where one person ends up being exploited or taken advantage of. Manipulation is viewed even more negatively when it becomes apparent that the conniving individual has heartlessly ignored the feelings of the other, putting their own selfish needs above everyone else. Even worse than, the manipulator has exploited the other by pretending to be their friend, and then using information shared in confidence against them. Whether in our personal or professional lives, there is one fact which remains. No one likes knowing they have been. No one. With such negativity associated with this hard, it becomes almost impossible to believe that there is a possibility manipulation could be used for good, or even that it could possibly bring about change for the better. As surprising as it may sound, manipulation is not all bad. Manipulation exists all around us, and you often don't have to look very far to find evidence of it. Take marketers and advertisers, for example, with their constant messages telling us to buy this, buy that, stop doing this, and stop doing that. They are all trying to manipulate our decisions in one way or another. Which forms of manipulation, though, are in fact trying to get us to change for the better? Ads that tell us to stop smoking and eat healthier are trying to manipulate our decisions, but in this case, they are trying to do it to incite positive change. Quitting smoking is for your own benefit. So at eating healthy, If it is for your own good, doesn't that make it a positive form of manipulation? Governments around the world manipulate their people. So does religion. Yet we sometimes chose to ignore it, because it comes from a more authoritative source. So to speak, businesses manipulate their customers all the time by creating products to boost their sales figures and then telling consumers they cannot live without it. Whether it's used for good or bad, manipulation is still, at the end of the day, manipulation. Do any of us really have any right to dictate in others' decisions or actions, even if we believe it is for their benefit? What makes the idea of manipulation such an uncomfortable notion to deal with is perhaps the fact that we don't like the idea of someone else trying to dictate what we should do, or pushing us into doing something we wouldn't otherwise be inclined to do ourselves. Managers at work try to manipulate their staff all the time, although the good leaders do it to try and keep their staff motivated or perform at their best. Effective managers have skillfully mastered the art of positive manipulation and turned it into an effective tool used to manage their employees' performance, pushing them to reach their goals. This distinguishing detail is the defining difference between what's classified as manipulation and what's referred to as persuasion. Persuasion is still a form of manipulation, but what separates it from the negative reputation associated with manipulation boils down to three things: your intention, your honesty, what the benefit or positive impact is going to be for the person you're trying to persuade. Manipulation versus persuasion. These three key points are going to be the deciding factor as to whether you're attempting to manipulate or persuade. When you're manipulation, your intention, you're selfish. When you persuade, it's usually well meaning for the good of the other person. When you manipulate, you lie, deceive, and try to hide what's really going on. When you persuade, you're able to be honest and upfront about what you're trying to do, because you have no reason to hide if it isn't done for personal gain. When you manipulate, there is no positive impact or benefit on the other party, only yourself. When you persuade, the other party you're trying to influence is the one who reached the most benefit out of the situation. Nonprofit organizations resort of persuasion all the time, trying to get others to act and change for the better, to create a positive impact on the world. They persuade donors, raise the necessary funding, and try to promote awareness among others regarding important issues which need to be addressed or changed. Manipulation and evidence of these laws in our daily routine. Manipulators are the puppet masters who sit behind the scenes, pulling the strings, playing mind games, so subtle and persuading you to do their dirty work for them. When you find yourself in a problem and you don't know how it happened, the manipulator could have had something to do with it. The evidence of manipulation is more apparent in a work environment, because this is where you spend most of your time, Monday to Friday, coming into contact with all sorts of individuals. A few signs to watch out for that signal you could have a manipulator in your midst include any of the following: too much flattery to a point it seems insincere, showering you with superficial charm, false sympathy, negotiations which end up being one-sided, and you are the one who doesn't usually benefit from it. Attempts to intimidate you verbally. Team projects where you find yourself taking on more responsibility than others who are just as capable of sharing the workload, but somehow don't. Expose you to passive-aggressive behavior, feeling wrong-footed, or being left in the dark about what's going on until the very last minute, feeling out of the loop on the Important decisions that get made. Realizing too late that you weren't privy to certain information. Rumors or gossip being circulated around the office. Trying to put one colleague against another. There always seems to be more confusion than solutions. After you've had a talk with them. Colleagues who refuse to admit their mistakes and attempt to cover it up by shifting the blame to someone else, even though they were clearly in the wrong. What makes these manipulators so dangerous is that these tactics sometimes don't stop at the office alone. You may even be surrounded by such individuals and within your immediate circle of friends or family. Except that it's much harder to see them for who they are and what they're doing. Because on some level, you don't want to believe that these people whom you care about could resort to such behavior. Sadly, these people exist all around us. And it is only when we wake up and pay attention to the following evidence that we start to realize our lives may be surrounded by more manipulators than we would like to admit. And the 13 laws of manipulation could be happening to you right this minute. They build your confidence, only to tear you down when it works in their favor. When you're meeting someone for the first time, and if they immediately start showering you with praise and flattery, be warned that this could be one of the 13 manipulation laws at play. When they tell you what you want to hear, they could be playing you like a fiddle by telling you everything that you want to hear. And if you think they could be laying it on just a little bit too thick, you are probably right. They could be building up your confidence, coercing you into believing that you could trust them enough to reveal information, only to tear you down at a later time. When it's convenient for them, they make you question your realities. The friend that tells you you are just imagining it, or you are making a big deal out of it. Dismissing your concerns is not doing it. To be a good friend, alleviating your fears once in a while is all right. But if your concerns are being dismissed or ridiculed whenever you bring it up, that could be a sign of manipulation at work. One of the classic tactics a narcissist or manipulator resorts to as trying to shift your perspective or reality by making you question your own judgment. They make you believe you're overreacting, or that you're the only one feeling this way. So perhaps there's something wrong with you. Instead, seems harmless enough. But if this goes on for too long, it can make you start doubting everything, making it hard for you to trust your own judgment. They start to digress. A classic sign that you're dealing with a potentially manipulative character on your hands is when they go completely off topic and steer the conversation in a completely different direction. There's a reason they do this, and that reason is often to leave you feeling confused and frustrated. This is a favorite tactic of many politicians, using digression as a form of distraction. They belittle you by telling you that your opinion does not matter, or that you're far too emotional to make a rational decision. They berate you for your thoughts, and even give you a negative label, so that you begin to think twice about raising your opinions. Social media has made it easier than ever for manipulators to comfortably sit behind their keyboards or their screens and make tall general statements aimed at causing maximum emotional damage to their targets. Pay close attention, and you will notice that a lot of their statements actually have no rational basis to these claims. Their sole purpose is simply to belittle their target. They love extreme labeling. Who do you know in your life that loves making you feel bad by exaggerating claims that highlight just how biased you can be? A colleague that makes unpleasant remarks about the way you dress and passes it off as simply joking around will very well turn around and make you out to be the bad guy. If you point out how much you dislike having remarks made about the way you dress, you can't take a joke. Can you? Or are you honestly that sensitive? Are examples of exaggerated statements aimed at making you out to be the bad guy. They never appreciate you no matter what you do. For them, it's never going to be food enough. No matter what you do, it will never be satisfactory enough to warrant any gratitude. Tell them you can dance, and they'll ask you if you can do math while you dance. Tell them you're happily single, and they'll ask, isn't it a struggle to be that lonely? Tell them you've been happily married for a while now, and if it's just you and your spouse, they'll ask what you're waiting for. And why haven't you started a family yet? No matter what you tell them, they'll always find some kind of fault with it. They make you feel bad about everything. Quite literally everything. If you go out with another group of friends, they'll make you feel bad about not inviting them. In a relationship, the manipulative partner can make you feel bad when you don't live up to their expectations. If you tell them you can't manage both dinner and a movie because you need to work late, and ask if just dinner alone is okay, you might be met with a response like, sure, I guess so. I was really looking forward to both. But I guess if you're happy with it, then it is okay. Suddenly turning things around and making it seem like you're the one at fault is what manipulators do best. These toxic individuals could even be your own family members. And that's one of the hardest truths to accept. To think your own family could be capable of manipulating you as an idea no one wants to be confronted with. But it happens. Keep an eye out for the following signs. If you suspect you could be dealing with manipulative family members in your household, every encounter leaves you feeling drained because it's always about them and almost always involves high-strung emotions. They make you feel bad about yourself. Whenever they're around, they push your buttons and constantly try to find fault with you. Constantly either playing the victim or refusing to admit their mistakes. You find yourself making excuses to avoid their company because you don't want to be around them. You always have to set aside your own desires to accommodate their needs. You find yourself having to watch what you say around them because this isn't the first time they have tried to use what you say to personally attack you. They make you feel guilty for not spending time with them. You feel like you have to pretend to be someone you're not when you're in their presence. Could be dealing with manipulative family members in your household. Every encounter leaves you feeling drained because it's always about them and almost always involves high-strung emotions. They make you feel bad about yourself. Whenever they are around, they push your buttons and constantly try to find fault with you. Constantly either playing the victim or refusing to admit their mistakes. You find yourself making excuses to avoid their company because you don't want to be around them. You always have to set aside your own desires to accommodate their needs. You find yourself having to watch what you say around them because this isn't the first time they have tried to use what you say to personally attack you. They make you feel guilty for not spending time with them. You feel like you have to pretend to be someone you're not when you're in their presence. Chapter 2, I think I'm being manipulated. There are certain people in your life that just make it so difficult for anyone to get along with them. They could be disagreeable, bossy, emotional, domineering, volatile, arrogant, rude, and a whole host of other challenging personality traits. While a lot of these behaviors can be neutralized when you carefully manage them, some characteristics and traits can be more damaging than others. to a point that no amount of management will be able to neutralize the toxic effects of their behavior. These people are usually the manipulators. Persuasion and dark psychology explained. As bad as this behavior can be, we often don't want to come right out and call someone manipulative. Being called a manipulator is a criticism against yours or someone else's character. If manipulation and persuasion are almost similar, why is manipulation viewed as immoral and just plain wrong? Humans are always trying to influence each other in one way or another, but certain traits associated with manipulation make this form of influence far worse than all the others. We are exposed to manipulation all the time. Sometimes we're on the receiving end, and sometimes we're the ones who are doing the manipulating. Gaslighting, a common manipulative term, is when you try to encourage someone else to doubt their own decisions in favor of going along with yours instead. When you make someone feel bad about not being able to follow through or backing out of a promise, that's a form of manipulation. Being pressured to go along with the group just to gain acceptance or approval is a form of manipulation. It's happening around us and in society all the time. What sets manipulation apart from all the other persuasive methods we use is because manipulation tends to directly harm the one who is being manipulated. Take cigarette ads, for example. They manipulative you into thinking it is cool, but it directly has a harmful effect on your health. Phishing or scams that manipulate you into thinking you stand a chance at winning a substantial sum of money are directly harmful to you because they result in fraud or identity theft. Politicians in some countries rely on manipulative tactics to weaken the notion of democracy. The direct and, more often than not, the harmful impact of manipulation is what sets it apart from all the other persuasive tactics out there. That's why it's not referred to as persuasion. Instead, even though the two methods rely on more or less the same approach, in the end it all comes down to your intent. The intention that lies behind your actions is what separates persuasion from manipulation. If your intentions are good, and there is a genuine desire to create a situation that benefits the other party, that's persuasion. If your intention is to do well, that's persuasion. If you're honest from the very beginning about what you're trying to do, that's persuasion. If you can say wholeheartedly that you have the other person's best interest at heart, that's persuasion. Needless to say that manipulation produces a far less desirable outcome. If your intent is to confuse, ridicule, blame, and still guilt and use them for your own benefit, regardless of whether they get hurt by your actions along the way, that's manipulation. If you knowingly engage in behavior that you know might cause someone else to get upset or look bad, yet you do it anyway, that's manipulation. If you don't care about the consequences of your actions and what they might do to someone else, as long as your own agenda is served, that's manipulation. At the end of the day, it is intention which determines if your actions make you a manipulator or not. Understanding the dark triad. Just when you thought manipulation was bad enough, here comes an even darker side of psychology, known as the dark triad. The triad is made of up three very distinct, yet interrelated personality types, which are narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. Why are these three referred to as the dark triad, or the darker side of human psychology? It's because these three terms define the very tactics of manipulation, persuasion, and coercion that some people resort to in order to get what they want. The term dark triad certainly has a sinister ring to it, and it is a term that many psychologists and criminologists use as a defining predictor that signals criminal behavior in an individual. Let's take a closer look at the three personality traits which make up this trifecta. Narcissism. The term stems from the Greek mythology about Narcissus, the hunter who fell in love with his own reflection when he saw it in a pool of water. Then he drowned as a result. So consumed was he by himself that he couldn't focus on anything else. Those with narcissistic personality traits often display symptoms which include being boastful, selfish, and arrogant, thinking only of themselves and nothing else. Narcissistic individuals also lack empathy and are extremely sensitive to any form of criticism because they can't bear the thought of being imperfect or flawed. Machiavellianism. This term stems from Niccolò Machiavelli, a renowned diplomat and politician who lived in 16th century Italy. Machiavelli became notorious when his book The Prince was published in 1513. This publication was interpreted as Machiavelli's endorsement of the deceit and cunning that takes place in diplomacy. Those who tend to display Machiavellianistic tendencies are often occupied with only their own self-interest, and they are manipulative and duplicitous. These individuals lack both morality and emotion, and they are not for anything else except for what's going to be beneficial to them. Psychopathy. Antisocial behavior. Manipulative, volatile, hostile, a lack of remorse or empathy are traits which are associated with a psychopathic personality. Psychopathic and being a psychopath are two distinctly different traits, with the latter commonly associated with or directly linked to criminal violence. In 2010, Dr. Peter Johnson, who was at the time an assistant professor of psychology based at the University of Western Florida, and Gregory Webster, his co-author and assistant professor of psychology based at the University of Florida, came up with what is now being referred to as the Dirty Dozen Scale. This scale was developed by Jonathan and Webster as a method of measuring the traits that the dark triad comprised of. Within the triad, these three personality traits tend to overlap at some point and are generally characterized by the degree of self-centeredness, exploitation, disagreeableness, and manipulation that takes place. Jonathan Webster and the team of researchers were trying to determine if sadism could, in fact, be captured within the laboratory. They were also trying to discover if these sadistic personality measures could be used to predict behaviors beyond the already established measures that the dark triad consisted of. In a second and related study that was conducted, the results, interestingly, revealed how individuals who displayed a high tendency of sadism, narcissism, and psychopathy were willing to act aggressively against an innocent party when aggression proved to be the easier choice. It was only a sadist who showed a tendency towards higher levels of aggression when it became apparent that their victim could not fight back, and that unlike other darker personalities, it was the sadists who were willing to spend the additional energy and time needed if it meant that extra effort was going to give them a chance to hurt someone else. This was a huge revelation, considering that in past other research studies revealed that while psychopaths had no problems inflicting hurt on others, they were much more likely to do so only if it served a specific purpose. Narcissists, on the other hand, were far less likely to engage in aggression unless they felt that their ego was being threatened, while Machiavellians resorted to aggression only if they felt the benefits were sufficient to warrant such action, and only if it involved acceptably low risks to themselves. Jonathan and Webster's Steady Measures. The responses that people gave when they were asked to rate themselves against the following. I have a tendency to lack remorse. I have resorted to manipulating others if it means getting my way, and I still have a tendency to do it. I have a tendency to rely on deceit to get my way. I have used flattery in the past to achieve my goals. I have exploited others as a means to an end, and I still have a tendency to do so. I have a tendency to expect special treatment or favors. I am not concerned about morality, nor am I not concerned about morality or outcome of my decisions and actions. I have a tendency to be insensitive and calloused towards others at times. I have a tendency to display cynicism. I like to seek status for prestige. I want to be admired by others. I want to be paid attention to. The individuals who took part in this study were rated from a scale of 1 to 7, and they were given a score which ranged anywhere from 12 to 84. The higher a participant's score was, the higher the possibility that they were individuals with one of the dark triad personality traits. Covert manipulative tactics are everywhere we look, from social media to the commercials that we are exposed to, even the sales tactics we're bombarded with when we try to make purchases in person. Even children resort to manipulative tactics from time to time as they begin experimenting with the different ways that work to give them the autonomy they seek. These tactics are even used by the people you love and trust the most. And here are some examples of everyday, ordinary individuals who might resort to dark psychology more so than others. True narcissists. This one goes without saying. Those who are clinically diagnosed as narcissists, especially, tend to carry with them an inflated sense of their own self-worth, which means they always have a need to validate disbelief by making themselves superior to others around them. Narcissists harbor dreams of being adored and worshipped by the masses, and they will resort to all sorts of manipulative and unethical behavior to get the adoration they want. True sociopaths. Those who are clinically diagnosed as sociopaths often appear intelligent and charming, but their downfall is impulsiveness. Since sociopaths tend to lack the ability to feel any kind of remorse, they take advantage of these dark personality tactics to build relationships which are superficial and not genuine, since they're only doing it for their own benefit. The selfish people, anyone with a hidden agenda that benefits themselves before others, have the potential to resort to these dark manipulative tactics if the outcome for them is a win. The politicians to get the votes that they need, and to get the masses to vote the way they want them to. Politicians are guilty of resorting to dark tactics of persuasion as a means to serve their end. The lawyers. Some attorneys will stop at nothing if it means they get to win their case, even if it means they have to resort to dark tactics to do so. The salespeople, just like attorneys and politicians. Some salespeople can be so focused on nothing but making a sale that they have no qualms about resorting to manipulative tactics to coerce a buyer into doing what they want. The leaders. Not all leaders are there to inspire, and some rely on manipulation to get others to comply with their demands. The public speakers. Not all public speakers can be trusted, and there are some out there who will resort to manipulation if it means there's an opportunity to sell more products to do so. These are just some of the many examples out there of people who will resort to the more malevolent side of the human personality spectrum, and always for no one else's benefit but their own. German, Danish research conducted recently revealed that while psychopathy, Machiavellianism, and narcissism do make up the dark triad, other personality traits could fall within a similar spectrum. Examples of these include egoism, spitefulness, and sadism, to name just a few. And as the research revealed, these malevolent traits all share one common thing, which is that they have a dark core. It is very likely that if you display any one of these tendencies, you might have a tendency for the others as well. Sadists have been mentioned several times throughout this chapter, because those with the dark triad tendencies harbor within them the potential to overlap into sadistic behavior. You might even have encountered a sadist in your life once or twice. Maybe they're still in your life now. If you know anyone who would purposefully cause another emotional harm and derive great pleasure from it, that's a sadist. What makes the sadist dangerous is that their actions can range from anywhere between petty and severe. Some common examples of what sadistic behavior might look like include purposely portraying another person in an unflattering way or false manner with the intent to damage to their reputation, purposely repeating secrets which they know are meant to be private, purposely trying to get a colleague fired behind their back, purposely jeopardizing a colleague's reputation in their absence, purposely marginalizing a colleague, family member, friend, or even an acquaintance, purposely trying to cause harm to someone else's relationship, resorting to bullying or cyberbullying, resorting to the theft of intellectual, physical, or financial property. Characteristics of a sadist. A skillful sadist will set these situations up so carefully that it becomes difficult to prove they were a guilty party involved. What makes it worse is that they will never own up to the responsibility or feel any kind of remorse for the damage that they have inflicted. People may even be reluctant to believe the sadist is behind the chaos because of their charming and likable personalities. A sadist will intentionally seek out to harm someone else because they believe that it is going to benefit them to do so. They might resort to these underhanded tactics whenever they feel envious or threatened by another, or even if they perceive someone else to be weaker and less likely to retaliate. In some cases, it may not be clear as to why the sadist has chosen to launch an attack on the victim. We don't often think or want to believe that the sadist could exist within our own immediate circle of connections. But they do, and they could be your parents' siblings, extended family members, spouse, friends, and the people that you work with. Here's an example of a scenario when a sadist might be lurking in your midst. Among your family, let's say this person, John Smith, lost his job not too long ago, and he was struggling with frustration and anxiety because he was having a hard time trying to find another. John seeks comfort and support by talking to his brother about it, but specifically requests that his brother keep the information to himself. John's brother agrees. After some time, John gets an invite to his brother's house for a casual get-together. Thinking nothing of it, John is then taken aback when several guests offer their sympathies over the fact that he had lost his job and couldn't land another. Embarrassed, hurt, and angry, John immediately knows that his brother was the one who leaked his secret, since he hadn't confided in his troubles with anyone else. When John confronts his brother later on, his brother denies any knowledge and has no idea what John is talking about. John's brother continues to adamantly deny the accusations making John feel guilty for suspecting him as the guilty party. It takes John a while to realize that this is not the first time he and his brother have been engaged in the same situation in the past, where John's brother has been responsible for several incidences which caused John either hurt or embarrassment, while denying any kind of responsibility. The sadist could be anyone anywhere, and they're always lurking undercover, making you question your own sanity, as they purposely inflict harm and hurting your life, and then denying any kind of responsibility for it. Have you ever had that feeling that something wasn't quite right with one of the relationships you have? Even with a casual encounter with someone you just met, something just didn't quite feel right, and you left feeling even more stressed, frustrated, or confused than when you first started. That could be a sign you were in the presence of a manipulator. The reason why manipulators resort to the tactics that they do is that they're often incapable of simply asking for what they need, or being able to express their needs in a healthy, direct manner. Since they lack these skills, they resort to this emotionally unhealthy strategy in an attempt to try and control the other people around them and force them to bend to their will. Manipulation comes in several forms, and it can range anywhere from abusive to simply just being around a bossy personality. Some manipulative behaviors are much easier to spot than others, and if you suspect you could be a victim of a psychological bully, these are the telltale clues you want to keep an eye out for. You're always forced to oblige. If you don't go along with what they want, they make you feel guilty about it, even though you had every right to say no. If you constantly feel pressured or forced into doing something you don't want to do, you are being manipulated. If you are afraid of saying no, you are being manipulated. If you feel bullied into going along with someone else's demands, you are being manipulated. Manipulators are experts at playing the victim card, and they will play it for all it's worth to make you feel as guilty as possible, like you're doing something wrong, because you chose to say no to them. You question your own judgment. Every time you're around a certain someone, you always find yourself questioning your own judgment. Suddenly something you were so sure of a minute ago fills you with doubt, making you second-guess your own decisions. After having a conversation with a manipulator, present an idea or opinion to them, and they'll somehow find a way to twist and turn it around, making you unsure and uncomfortable. Spend enough time with them, and they'll make you feel unworthy, like you're a complete failure and nothing you could do will ever be the right choice. No favor comes for free. If they do you a favor, you can bet there will always be strings attached to that request. Nothing a manipulator does is ever its genuine favor. There will always be an ulterior motive for why they are helping you out. If accepting help or a favor from someone makes you feel uncomfortable because you know you're going to owe them for it later, you are dealing with a manipulator. When the manipulator does you a favor, there's an expectation to be repaid. They'll be the first ones to tell you that you owe me this, and you'll feel obliged to go out of your way to help, because you feel guilty about saying no. Say no to them, and they'll make you feel like the most ungrateful person in the world. You are always getting blamed. Even when you haven't done anything wrong, you are somehow the one to blame. That one manipulative friend who always has an excuse for their bad behavior or poor judgment. The one that always makes you the scapegoat. That's not a friend. That's a manipulator. It's your fault. You made me think I should do it. I wouldn't have done it if you agreed it was a bad idea. The hallmark of a manipulative friend is when somehow you're always in the mix, and the one made to feel like you're in the wrong. They're not really listening to. Another sign you could be manipulated is when they don't really listen. When you're speaking, they may look at you while you're talking, but at the first chance they get, they twist the conversation back around into something that involves them. Everything is always about them. In fact, the only time they seem to be engaged in when they're gathering the information that they can later use against you when the time is right. Beware of what you say when you are around them, and never trust them with confidential or important information. They come to you when they need something. Do you have that one friend who only ever seems to get in touch with you when they conveniently need a favor? That friend could be manipulating you, especially if you're the one who is constantly doing those favors. But when you need help the most, they're never around, or they've always got some excuse up their sleeve as to why they can't help you. When they need something from you, however, they behave like you're their best friend in the whole world. Clues that indicate your partner may be a lying manipulator. One of the worst sinking feelings you could feel is knowing that your partner, the person whom you love and who supposedly loves you, turns out to be using you for their own benefit all this time. A relationship is supposed to be one place where we believe we can receive the support, love, commitment, and the care that we all yearn for deep down inside. To love and to be loved wholeheartedly in return. Sadly, there are many out there who have their hearts broken when they realize that not only is their partner someone unreliable, but someone who has been controlling their strings like a puppet all along. We all have certain expectations and romanticized notions of what we think love is, thanks to the way love has been portrayed in society. Through the movies we watch, articles we read, and social media posts we're scrolling through almost every day. When we see jealousy playing out on screen, we believe it's a sign of intense love, because the two people in the movie are afraid of losing their loved one to another. The popular Twilight movies and literature leads us to believe that true love and relationships are about obsession, that love is an all-consuming feeling, that when two people are in love, nothing else matters and no boundaries exist. This romanticized notion blinds to the fact that this is not what reality is at all, and that kind of love only exists in movies and between the pages of books because they make for good storyline. In real life, that kind of behavior are indicators of manipulation. Being controlling isn't about love. It is manipulation. Being obsessed isn't being passionate, it's manipulative. On some level, we know we should be able to recognize the signs of an abusive partner in a relationship. We know that we should. But it's easier said than done. When we love, we tend to blind ourselves to our partner's fault. We make excuses for the behavior. That should be setting off alarm bells in our head, because we're trying to avoid facing the truth. We don't want to have our hearts broken that way. And we try to convince ourselves that they're not really like that at all. When a relationship escalates from controlling to just outright abusive, there is cause for concern. But being in a manipulative relationship can be just as hurtful and damaging too. Being in a relationship with a manipulator can be just as damaging on you, emotionally and mentally. Manipulative partners will seek to control you, minimizing your independence. They try to control every decision you make, belittle you and damage your self-esteem. So you come to doubt yourself and believe you're the lucky one, because no one will love you as they can. They make you afraid about losing this relationship and make you fearful of entering into any future relationships because you've been traumatized by this past experience, scared of getting into yet another relationship with someone who manipulates you. Being in a relationship with a manipulator can leave you with emotional wounds and scars that will take a very, very long time to heal if they ever do. Some of the more common signs you are in a relationship with a manipulator is when your partner is constantly forcing you to look or dress in a way that only they approve of, or dictates who you can and cannot spend your time with. The love and support that's supposed to come from genuine relationships is not something you're going to find when you are in a relationship with a manipulator. If your partner is someone who is manipulative, lying to try and control you and the situation in their favor, is something that's going to be a common occurrence in your relationship. And these are the clues to watch out for. Lying to make you feel guilty about spending time with others. Since the manipulator wants to be in control, they'll try to cut you off from your support system as much as possible by trying to restrict the amount of time you spend with your family and friends. They'll resort to lies and sob stories about how hurt they feel, that you've neglected them when they needed you most, and tell you that they feel you're always putting other people's needs above theirs when you claim that you love them. Their goal is to try and isolate you from the other people in your life so you become totally dependent on them. The more you rely on them, the more controlling power they have over you. They may not outright tell you to stop spending time with other people, but rather they try to suddenly nudge you inch by inch away from your social circle through the lies that spin to make you feel guilty about your actions. They lie and criticize. Every little thing you do is subject to criticism when you are with someone who is manipulative. The worst part of it all is that they lie so convincingly when they tell you they're doing it because they love you or that it's for your own good. They will constantly criticize just about everything that you do. The longer you continue to remain in a relationship with them, they'll criticize everything from the way you dress, the way you talk, the things you say, the way you spend your money, your passion, your hobbies, your interests, the decisions you make. Even when you suggest fun ways to spend quality time together, if it's not something they want to do, they'll find a way to critique it. They'll criticize you so often that you feel incompetent and insecure enough that you no longer feel comfortable making decisions without running it by them first. They're not trying to help you. They're trying to undermine you. They create mistrust. You may be the most completely honest and trustworthy person there is, but a manipulator can make you feel otherwise. As deeply in love as two people are, they are still individuals in their own right, and everyone is entitled to their privacy. Unless you're in a relationship with a manipulator, that is because they'll completely disregard this fact, given that they're never satisfied unless they can control every aspect of your life. A manipulative partner will refuse to acknowledge your right to privacy and has no problem spinning lies and guilt to make you out to be the bad guy. When you try to protect your privacy, they make you feel like you are the one who has something to hide, that you are the one who cannot be trusted because you choose to keep your emails or text messages private. They'll even try to make you feel bad for protecting your diary, if you have one. The manipulator thirsts for control, and when they can't get it, they resort to any means necessary to try and invade your privacy. Your privacy is your right, and you should never have to feel forced to reveal what you're not comfortable with. Manipulators might demand access to your passwords, social media accounts, and even more private information by spinning some tale about how they're afraid that you might break their heart by cheating on them. They could even tell you tales of how they have been cheated on in the past and how much it hurt them to have their hearts broken that way. The point is they'll tell you whatever story it takes to get you to feel guilty enough to reveal your private information, even going so far as to claim that two people who are in love should never have secrets from each other. However, there is a big difference between being secretive and having a right to privacy. And being in a relationship does not mean you have to sacrifice the latter. They talk a lot about protecting you, which is, of course, nothing but another lie. When it's coming from the manipulator, they're not protecting you. They're not even thinking about that. When all they care about is their own self-interest. Deep down, who wouldn't love the idea of knowing that there's someone out there who loves them enough to protect them from the big bad world? That person does exist, just not with a manipulator. Unfortunately, when you love someone, there is a natural desire to want to protect them and keep them from feeling hurt. When you love someone, you are willing to do whatever it takes to keep them safe, and you never want to see them hurt, upset, or unhappy in any way. The manipulative partner will lead you to believe that this is what they want for you. But the red flags should start to go up. When protecting on their terms means they get to make all the decisions for you about how you should live your life. They'll tell lies about wanting to protect your finances, protecting you from friends who are not good, influencing you, protecting you by constantly keeping tabs on where you're going and what you're doing. When you tell them you are uncomfortable with this kind of control, they turn around and lie once more by convincing you they are doing it out of love and because they want to protect you, when the truth is they are trying to do the complete opposite. They want you to depend on no one else but them, so they will always have the upper hand. If you really were in a healthy relationship, your partner will be protective, but they'll also be realistic. They know they can't protect you from everything, and they certainly won't try to by dictating how every aspect of your life should be run. When you're in trouble, they'll find constructive ways to help you, instead of making you feel bad from not listening to them. They won't demand that you hand over your password or any other private information in the aim of protecting you. They provoke you with lies. Sometimes a manipulator could resort to provoking you into an argument by lying and exaggerating, blowing things out of proportion, just because they know it pushes your buttons. When they do, they purposely say things which are targeted at triggering negative emotions within you, even going so far as to lie, just to make their argument more convincing. You are left with the nagging question of why they do things the way they do. Because sometimes they simply want to push your buttons, just to make you angry enough to say something that they can use against you later on. When you tell them their argument makes no sense, they'll put on a show worthy of an Oscar about how deeply you've hurt them. They'll keep pushing and pushing, and if you let them, they'll push you right over the edge. And everything you say can and will be used against you at the next opportunity they get. They tell you they'll die without you. Possibly one of the biggest lies a manipulator spins are the lies that tell you they simply cannot live without you. That if you leave them, they will die. They are not going to, and they will certainly never do anything to harm themselves. It is just a lie that they are spinning to make you feel guilty for even entertaining the notion of possibly ending the relationship. When you see them for who they really are, there's a term for this kind of behavior, and it's called emotional blackmail. And it is arguably one of the most selfish characteristics of being in a relationship with a manipulative individual. No one should have to make you feel scared or guilty about doing what's best for you. And they certainly should not be shoving the responsibility of their life onto you in such a manner. Telling you that they will die if you ever leave them is nothing but an empty threat. And once you know for sure you want to cut ties with the manipulator, never let them make you feel guilty for this decision. You have a responsibility for your own well-being, and what they choose to do with their life is up to them. As intricately as a spider spins its web, they'll lie, twist those lies, and then twist those lies even more, until you don't know what's real and what isn't anymore. Twisting and distorting the facts, tangling lies on top of more lies, is a favorite tactic of the manipulator to confuse and frustrate you. They'll drive you insane and make you question your own sanity. And they do it so skillfully to the point that you believe something is wrong with you instead of them. It can be hard to keep tabs on a manipulator's tangled web of lies. But you must learn to trust your instincts and rely on your own judgment, even if they're trying hard to convince you that you're wrong. If something doesn't sit right with you, learn to trust your gut because you are probably right. Especially if you know you've caught them in a lie more than once. You trusted your own judgment before you got into a relationship with them, and you need to trust your own judgment now more than ever. Don't let them confuse you with their lies. Chapter 3: The Dark Side of Manipulation. We know manipulators exist, and that they are all around us. But who are these people exactly? What sort of personalities do they have? In a romantic relationship, they're the partner who is abusive and controlling, damaging not just a relationship the two of you have built, but taking your self-esteem down right along with it. In a family dynamic, they're the family member who constantly creates disharmony and chaos, or the one who always wants to be the center of attention. They could be the sister, brother, aunt, uncle, cousin, mother, or father who makes subtle remarks aimed at making everyone else around them feel inadequate or insecure. The manipulator could be your next-door neighbor or friend who is spreading rumors and gossip, the one who enjoys pitting one person against the other, and then standing back and watching the fight. At work, the manipulator could be the colleague who has a track record for being dishonest and unethical, willing to stoop as low as they can to get what they want and stepping on everyone else's toes on their way to the top. Out on the streets, the manipulators are the criminals and con artists who rely on deception and distraction to swindle you out of your hard-earned cash, robbing you in broad daylight without you knowing it, and them stealthily covering their tracks to avoid being detected. The manipulator can come in any shape or form, sometimes in the form of a person you least expect. And among the several things that a lot of these manipulators have in common is the fact that they suffer from some form of personality disorder that makes them who they are. In 1835, physician Dr. James Cowles Pritchard proposed the term moral insanity to describe these individuals who, although not technically insane by today's standards, had very significant and distinguishing differences in their attitudes and the way they behaved when it came to morality, ethics, and their emotional reactions or responses to certain situations. Yet despite these Obvious differences when compared to other individuals. Those classified under moral insanity showed very little social or emotional distress over their behavior. These individuals, who suffered from a personality disorder of some sort, had a long history of emotional personality, relationship, and behavioral difficulties that were very significantly different from that of their families or even culture. The behavior patterns exhibited were dysfunctional and intruded into just about every aspect of their life, which created problems in their emotional and personal ability to function, which likely contributes to their manipulative tendencies. Among the personality types that are more like to resort to manipulation, the histrionic personality type. The individual with this pervasive behavior has a tendency to seek out attention and resort to excessive displays of emotion, often referred to as being dramatic. When involved in a relationship, they can resort to highly manipulative behavior in order to get what they want. The antisocial personality. These individuals are capable of being manipulative because they hold little regard for the unspoken societal rules that everyone else follows. These antisocial personalities could consist of a range of behavior patterns, which include being unsupportive, chronically unreliable and irresponsible, counting others, and for the ones who have no regard for another person's fundamental rights, could even resort to criminal activity and show no remorse for it. Clinically, these individuals are extremely selfish, with lying, deception, intimidation, and even physical assault being part of the many behavioral patterns they could potentially exhibit. The borderline personality disorder. These individuals can be intense, volatile, and unstable when it comes to their self-perception, moods, and relationships. They have little to no ability to control their impulses, and the common characteristics associated with this type of behavior include fear of abandonment, being unstable when it comes to their self-image, social relationships, displaying inappropriate but intense feelings of anger and paranoia, and even resorting to impulsive or self-damaging acts, which include substance and alcohol abuse. This instability could then lead them to perform acts of manipulation. The narcissistic personality disorder, previously discussed in Chapter 2, as being a part of the dark triad. Having a narcissistic personality is a disorder which leads to a sense of entitlement, a need to be admired, and an inflated sense of self-worth. It is not uncommon for these individuals to have a huge ego, and they care little for anyone else but themselves. This lack of empathy for others, arrogance, inflated self-esteem, sense of entitlement, which leads them to believe that they deserve to have special privileges and attention, can lead towards feelings of jealousy or envy when their needs are not being met. This high sense of entitlement also leads them to believe that they have a right to punish or exact revenge on anyone whom they perceive as not giving them the attention, due respect, or admiration that they believe they deserve. Psychologically, narcissism is not capable of genuine self-love, since those who struggle with narcissism are more in love with the grandiose and idealized, unrealistic image of themselves that they have built up in their minds. These delusions of grandeur that they harbor within them are exactly what leads to such dysfunctional behavior, and why these individuals are more often than not described as demanding, selfish, patronizing, and manipulative. Their friendships, family life, romantic relationships, and even Professional relationships are not safe from the narcissistic tendencies. And what makes it harder is that those with this personality disorder are reluctant to change, preferring instead to expect others to conform to their needs. What makes the narcissist a dangerous manipulator? It's not just arrogance and vanity that contribute to a narcissist's delusion of superiority, but the grandiose idea that they are more important than everyone else around them. That leads the narcissist to believe they are special enough to warrant getting anything that they want. They see themselves as being better than everyone else, and they only want to associate with those whom they deem to be on the same level as they are. What makes the narcissist such a dangerous type of manipulative personality is because they don't just believe they deserve respect and recognition. They demand it. The narcissistic personality disorder, previously discussed in Chapter 2, as being a part of the dark triad. Having a narcissistic personality is a disorder which leads to a sense of entitlement, a need to be admired, and an inflated sense of self-worth. It is not uncommon for these individuals to have a huge ego, and they care little for anyone else but themselves. This lack of empathy for others' arrogance, inflated self-esteem, sense of entitlement which leads them to believe that they deserve to have special privileges and attention, can lead towards feelings of jealousy or envy when their needs are not being met. This high sense of entitlement also leads them to believe that they have a right to punish or exact revenge on anyone whom they perceive as not giving them the attention, due respect, or admiration that they believe they deserve. Psychologically, narcissism is not capable of genuine self-love, since those who struggle with narcissism are more in love with the grandiose and idealized, unrealistic image of themselves that they have built up in their minds. These delusions of grandeur that they harbor within them are exactly what leads to such dysfunctional behavior, and why these individuals are more often than not described as demanding, selfish, patronizing, and manipulative. Their friendships, family life, romantic relationships, and even professional relationships are not safe from the narcissistic tendencies. And what makes it harder is that those with this personality disorder are reluctant to change, preferring instead to expect others to conform to their needs. What makes the narcissist a dangerous manipulator? It's not just arrogance and vanity that contribute to a narcissist's delusion of superiority, but the grandiose idea that they are more important than everyone else around them. That leads the narcissist to believe they are special enough to warrant getting anything that they want. They see themselves as being better than everyone else, and they only want to associate with those whom they deem to be on the same level as they are. What makes the narcissist such a dangerous type of manipulative personality is because they don't just believe they deserve respect and recognition. They demand it. They've created a skewed perception of reality in their mind, in which they are the star of their own show, and everyone else is merely a supporting player. Anything and anyone that is perceived as a threat, just waiting to burst the bubble of their fantasy world, is going to be met with extreme reactions, which could include defensiveness, threats, and even outright rage, since they have a constant need to be praised, admired, and recognized. Maintaining a healthy relationship with a narcissist becomes nearly impossible. The relationship is doomed to be one-sided from the start, a relationship where mutual benefit does not exist, since the only one that stands to gain anything is the narcissist. since they genuinely believe they deserve to get anything they want, because they're better than everyone else around them. They expect everyone to automatically bend over backward and comply with their every demand without question. To the narcissist, anyone who doesn't meet their demands or go along with what they want is considered useless and invaluable. Should you be brave enough to deny their requests, or even be so bold as to ask for a favor in return for all the help you've given them in the past, it won't take much for them to fly off the handle and react aggressively, in anger, outrage, or even emotionally torture you by subjecting you to the silent treatment. The narcissist is a danger to your mental and emotional well-being for the simple reason that they have no regrets and will be more than willing to take advantage of, exploit you for their own personal gain, without shame or remorse for their actions. This inflated sense of self-worth leads them to believe that they are entitled to treat you any way that they see fit, and they'll never see their actions as being wrong or immoral in any way. In several ways, the narcissist has almost earned their spot in the dark triad, and one of the biggest reasons why is that they view everyone else around them as objects to be used. To the narcissist, you exist for no other reason other than to serve their needs, and that is it. They will never stop to think twice about taking advantage of you, only to discard you when you no longer serve any useful purpose. To them, they can be both malicious and oblivious at the same time, blinded mostly by their own self of entitlement. They are incapable of thinking how their actions could have consequences on everyone else. Even if you were to point it out to them, they'll simply dismiss and refuse to believe you. The narcissist will demean you, bully you, and belittle you if it means they're going to get their way. If they feel threatened by you, or perceive you as trying to push back against them, they resort to putting you down to inflate their already inflated ego. In their mind, this is how they neutralize their enemies, by stopping on them until they feel too insecure to rise up and challenge them in any way. Threats, bullying, insults, shaming, dismissiveness, and ridicule are just some of the many tactics they will employ in an attempt to get you back in line and put you in your place. Manipulators and their covert aggressive personalities. When it comes to aggression, there are two categories they could fall into. They either resort to overt aggression or covert aggression, when someone is obvious, direct, and open in the manner with which they choose to stand up or fight back. That's overaggression. This is a category the manipulator is unlikely to fall into, since they never want anyone to know what they're really up to. No, a manipulator prefers to go with the second option, which is covert aggression, a method which allows them to be deceptive, subtle, and underhanded enough to hide their true intentions. However, a very powerful manipulator will know how to use both traits and harness to combine power of both, avoiding any outright displays of overt aggression, while still being able to intimidate another enough to get them to do what you want. Covert aggression is a manipulator's preferred mode of operation when it comes to interpersonal interaction. Covert aggression is not necessarily an act that is reserved for manipulators alone. Almost everyone is engaged in some form of covertly aggressive behavior. Every now and then, occasionally, have to resort to covert aggressive behavior for one reason or another. Does not mean you have a covert aggressive type of personality. When you habitually repeat this type of behavior the way a manipulator does, then it becomes part of your personality. Manipulators with covert. Aggressive personalities rely on a steady diet of control, deception, and manipulation to keep them going. This tactic has become a part of who they are, and their preferred way of dealing with everyone else around them, to get things done the way they want it to go. For those who have never experienced it firsthand, they might have a hard time understanding why. Victims of manipulation have a hard time realizing what's going on and why. They fail to see that they're being taken advantage of. It can be tempting to burst the victims off and assume that they are foolish for allowing themselves to be manipulated in that way. That is until you come to understand that there are very good reasons why the victims fail to realize they're being manipulated until it's too late, especially when the manipulator relies on covert aggression to hoodwink their targets. Covert aggression in the hands of a manipulator is so effective because the manipulator's aggression is well hidden. It makes it hard for the victims to fight back against something they cannot clearly pinpoint or find any evidence against, even if the gut feeling is telling them something is off, and that perhaps this person in front of them is trying to take advantage. The manipulator does it in such a stealthy manner that it becomes difficult for the victim to identify their true motives. It makes the manipulators seem like they're resorting to any other tactic except fighting. Covert aggression allows the manipulator to cover their tracks by making it seem as though they're defending their victim, perhaps even caring for them and standing up for them. It is difficult to know for sure that these tactics are nothing more than a clever ploy when the manipulator does it in such a way that it makes just enough sense to be believable, enough that the victim begins to doubt their own gut instincts, which tell them they might be manipulated. The sides being a clever maneuver that keeps the fact the manipulator is actually fighting the victim. Well-hidden covert aggression simultaneously keeps the victim consciously defensive, making it very difficult for them to think straight when they feel drained from being on the run emotionally. This is why manipulators love covert aggression, because it's such an effective psychological weapon. It gives the manipulator power to know exactly which buttons to push in their victim. Everyone has their own insecurities and weaknesses that they deal with, and if the manipulator has been around you long enough, they will know these weaknesses better than you might, like using covert aggression to exploit you in just the right manner that it becomes easy to forget you are being taken advantage of. Take a parent, for example, who knows that one of their weaknesses is the fact that they can easily be made to feel guilty when their manipulative child, who has been able to detect this weakness, pushes on the right buttons to get what they want. It becomes easy for the parent to forget what's really going on when they want to give in to their child and make them happy. It allows the manipulator to be the proverbial wolf in sheep's clothing. Manipulators with these covert aggressive personality types work hard and keeping their aggressive behavior well and truly hidden behind a mask that prevents others from seeing what's really going on. They hide their less than honorable intentions behind the guise of being charming and a personality so likable, it's hard to believe that underneath that layer is an aggressive and ruthless personality just waiting to take you down. They know how to pick just the right victims to target, too often going for those who are more openly vulnerable than others, conscientious, or those with a softer, more sensitive nature that's easier to take advantage of and less likely to fight back. Here's an example of what covert aggression might look like in a husband and wife scenario. Let's say that the wife one day decides to have a conversation with her husband about the fact that he is not spending enough time with her and the kids that she would like him to, and she's concerned that he is missing out on quality family time with the kids. The husband immediately responds by making himself out to be the victim in this situation, by pointing out how he feels pressured by the wife, who constantly makes unreasonable demands. He then goes on to portray himself as the one who is suffering and underappreciated, because no one seems to be feeling grateful or acknowledging how hard he works to support the family. The husband then rounds it off by delivering the knockout punch, which includes shame and making the wife feel guilty by claiming that all she seems to do is complain, and nothing he does is ever good enough for her. The wife, who started off with a completely different intention in mind, one where she wanted to fix what she perceived to be a problem, is now being made to seem like the cruel, heartless, and unappreciative bad guy, when in reality, that was not what she was trying to do at all. If the wife doesn't see this attack coming, she can be successfully manipulated into believing that she's the one who is in the wrong, unable to see what the husband just did there. Even if this pattern of behavior has repeated itself several times in the past, the wife will most likely, in this scenario, apologize and give in to the husband's dominance, completely unaware that she was just manipulated into feeling like the guilty party. As American author Steve Maraboli so succinctly put it, the louder a person makes claims of sainthood, the bigger the horns they're trying to hide. Only the manipulator will know the exact reasons why they choose to target the victims that they do. But when they do choose a target, it's because that person has something they either need or want. It could be a financial need, an emotional or even physical need. If you have it and they need it, you are a target to them. Manipulators delight in this cat and mouse game that they play with their victims, reveling in the fact that the entire time they are the ones in a position of power. Since the victim has no idea what's going on, they use the connection and the bond that they have built with their victims to hold them hostage. And the poor victim is sometimes being made to feel like they have no other choice except to comply. And that is why people with personality disorders are so dangerous and manipulative. It might sound like something straight out of a science fiction movie, but mind control is possible. Well, sort of. Not the kind of mind control where you have the power to turn anyone into a robot. You can control any way you like, but close enough. The kind of mind control that suddenly goes unnoticed most of the time is the kind of mind control that is taking place all around us every day. It's the influence. Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion, a book written in the 1980s by researcher Dr. Robert Cialdini, highlights several different scientifically proven methods and principles which are used to influence others, along with several suggestions as to how to go about doing it. Since it was written, it has become among the most important books in the marketing world, and businesses use these tactics all the time in trying to sell their products to consumers. Mind control isn't about magic powers or having any kind of supernatural knowledge at all. In fact, mind control at its most basic form exists in the form of marketing and advertising, something which all of us are exposed to every day. On a more personal level, mind control techniques are tapped into by manipulators to control everyone else around them when they try to dictate the outcomes in their favor. Mind control techniques exist all around us. Once we open our eyes and start looking around, Advertising and marketing is just one form of subtle mind control. Another big one that is most of the world addicted to it on a daily basis is social media. Facebook has successfully built its global empire, which boasts 1.6 billion users who are actively participating on this platform and counting. And yet, hardly any of the users are likely to realize how Facebook has managed to amass that kind of power through subtle mind control techniques. And one such technique is through inducing within its users the fear of missing out on what's happening. Humans have always craved contact with other humans. And historically we have never coped with loneliness. Each and every one of us has a deep-seated desire to be accepted, to have a community that we can relate to or identify with. And it is exactly the fear of losing connection with the friends and followers you have on your social media accounts that keeps you coming back for more. Social media is still not the full story, because mind control techniques don't stop there either. What do you think happens each time to type in a quick search into your Google browser? Do you genuinely believe that you have complete autonomy when you're conducting your online research? According to Robert Epstein, a psychologist, that's not what's happening at all. What's really going on is what Epstein calls SIME. The SIME effect is rooted in the fact that each time the user hops online to search for something, half the time what we end up clicking on are the first two results that appear on the first page of Google. More than 90% of the clicks that take place are happening within the top 10 results which Google has displayed in front of you. There are pages and pages of other results, other websites, and links, which still contain the keyword you're looking for. But it is Google that ends up deciding what you're going to end up reading, which is most of the time what's on the first page. And here we thought we had complete control over our search choices too. Dr. Robert Hare, a researcher and an expert in the field of criminal psychology, explains that basic mind control techniques are used all the time by psychopaths who attempt to form a relationship with someone with the intention to control and dominate them. The narcissist is another group of people who frequently resort of mind control tools to coerce their victims into doing their bidding. Mind control is nothing more than another extreme form of manipulation, and it is just as dangerous as all the other manipulative techniques applied, because we don't see mind control as something that is present in our day-to-day life. We tend to think of brainwashing as something that only cults or religious groups resort to, or something that advertisers and politicians are more likely to resort to than the average person. It can be hard to fathom that the colleague working alongside you in the next cubicle is more than capable of applying subtle mind control techniques as a way of exerting control over you. Common examples of mind control techniques taking place right in front of us through the manipulator we know include being offered several choices without realizing that all those choices lead to the same conclusion. This is how the manipulator leads to believe that you have a choice and you're making your own decisions, when in reality, they've already made the decision for you, having the same idea or phrase repeated to you so often that it now sticks in your brain. Having the manipulator perform a technique known as intelligence dampening on you. This is where they will provide you with a series of brief snippets of information on several different subjects, indirectly training your brain for short-term memory and making you feel overwhelmed by the amount of information you are receiving on several subjects. This overwhelming feeling is exactly what they want you to feel, because it has you turning to them for answers and make you more susceptible to going along with what they want. Ever had a colleague who came and fired off a series of instructions to you before you have had time to process it, and then conveniently offer solutions, and you feel so relieved you accept without a second thought? Mind control at work. Manipulating your emotions by putting you in a state where your emotions are heightened to a point that it makes it hard for you to think straight. The harder it is for you to focus, the easier it is for them to control you by implanting ideas into your mind. Mind control techniques are effective in the hands of psychopaths because they know how to read the people around them effectively. They've worked hard at developing this into an art form, motivated mainly by the strong desire to control and exert dominance over their targets. Psychopaths have learned how to size up their targets, quickly doing a quick but accurate assessment of what their weaknesses and strengths may be. And as they go along, they continue to gather more information about their targets, which provides them with more leverage and control. If you think someone you know could be using subtle mind control techniques against you, watch out for the following red flags. You feel isolated one day. You look around, and you realize you've somehow managed to isolate all your friends, and you're feeling extremely lonely. All of a sudden, you are not quite sure how it happened, and the only friend left whom you can turn to is the one who caused the isolation in the first place. You changed your behavior for them. When was the last time you did something that genuinely made you happy in your romantic relationship? Something that was for yourself, without being worried or afraid of what your partner might say or how they would react. Sulking, being moody, and getting you to change your behavior for them just to avoid an argument from happening is a telltale sign that mind control techniques in your relationship are starting to make themselves known. When you start changing your actions because of what someone else wants, you are being controlled. Nonverbal cues to control. Relying on a technique known as metacommunication, the manipulator will attempt to mind control you by relying on nonverbal cues to get you to change your mind. For example, if you were to suggest that you and your partner go out to get dinner from that pizza place you like but they don't, they could agree but accompany that yes with a loud, dramatic sigh and a slump of their shoulders, which leaves no room for doubt that they would prefer to say no instead. Through neurolinguistic programming, the more skilled manipulators resort to using NLP as one of their many mind control methods. NLP is a technique in which the manipulator uses language to layer certain thoughts that they want to plant into your subconscious mind without you knowing it. NLP works by observing the different aspects of an individual and then using language to implant a suggestion. For example, if Persona was someone who was more visually oriented, then the manipulator might use NLP by turning to language through visual cues like, "Do you see what I mean?" If Person B with someone who was more inclined towards auditory cues, the NLP language used might be along the lines, "If I completely hear what you're saying." Not all mind control is bad. In the hands of a manipulator, yes, mind control can be a bad thing. But mind control on its own isn't all bad. In fact, there are several forms of mind control techniques which are being practiced today that have significant benefits in helping us improve our lives for the better. These techniques: meditation, a practice that has existed for centuries. Meditation is one of the oldest Most effective mind control techniques in the world today. It literally encourages you to intentionally control your mind by calming your thoughts and emptying it of all the noisy chatter, so that instead, peace and serenity can flow through you and help you relax when you need it most. Science has even successfully managed to prove that the alpha waves, which are produced in the mind, tend to peak after a good meditative session. And the alpha waves are the ones responsible for enriching our creative minds and strengthening positive thinking. Visualization, a practice that has long been used by many successful individuals to help them train themselves mentally for success. Visualization is an exercise tool used to train the mind for success, no matter how insurmountable or impossible the goal that has been set is. Sports coaches and athletes rely on visualization techniques all the time to get them performing at their peak. Lebanese-American writer and poet Khalil Gibran famously penned the couplet, which read that anything you single-mindedly ask the universe for, the universe will deliver. That same idea was later delivered by Rhonda Byrne to the masses in her book, The Secret to Mirror Technique and Approach, which has long been touted as an effective means of increasing your self-confidence. Talking to yourself in the mirror is another example of mind control techniques at work. Giving yourself a positive pep talk each day strengthens your belief in your own abilities, the same way positive affirmations do. You're feeding your mind with each sentence you say to focus on your positive attributes, which then gives you the focus you need to work towards your goals. Hypnosis. Another form of meditation is hypnosis, which is once again a form of mind control, because you're having to deliberately remove all other thoughts from your mind and focus on nothing but one goal. Hypnosis or self-hypnosis requires the repetition of one single mantra and repeated often enough that it sticks in your mind. This technique is used frequently to free those who are struggling with self-destructive habits and behaviors. Like alcoholics, for example, goal writing nothing feels quite real enough until you see it directly in front of you. It might not have occurred to you that the act of writing down your goals is yet another form of mind control. But it is. When you write down your goals, you are giving them a concrete form. Seeing in front of you right down on a piece of paper makes it more real than it ever seemed when it was just an idea swimming around in your mind. Seeing it in front of you shifts your mindset and gives you something concrete to focus on. And that sense of purpose is going to spur you towards the success you want to achieve. Positive forms of mind control. Mind control techniques, when used the right way, can make a significant change in your life for the better. Mind control can teach you how to stay in control. If you were to let your mind roam free, who knows where it might take you? One of the most distracting and dangerous thoughts that everyone has a tendency to are the ones that lead us down a dark and negative path. Without mind control to force you to take charge and steer your thoughts in the direction you want them to go, it might be hard to maintain the focus that you need to stay on top of your game against the wily ways of the manipulator. Mind control can strengthen your belief and your confidence in yourself and reaffirm your trust in your own judgment by reminding you that you are strong, confident, and capable, and no one should ever make you doubt your own abilities. Evidence of manipulation taking place in society. Noam Chomsky almost 30 years ago presented the world with an interesting take on manipulation and how it is being used In the media. Back then that was quite possibly the biggest evidence of manipulation taking place in our society. But things have changed rather drastically over the past 30 years. Now evidence of manipulation exists not merely in the ads that we're exposed to every day, but across the internet and social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and more. This is now the biggest evidence that manipulation exists all around us. Everything that you now see here, watch and read online and on social media is manipulating you in one way or another. Before the days of social media, we had far fewer manipulative threats to contend with. Today news spreads around the world in mere seconds with a simple click of a mouse. And because the power of the internet is one that anyone who can string several sentences together can take advantage of, we're now more susceptible than ever to content which has been fabricated, exaggerated, distorted, simplified, and presented in such a way that it is purposely meant to skew our perception. It's almost as if the media today exists to make you do things that you otherwise might not say or do. When you go online, onto a company's website, and read the product reviews on the site, who's to say that those reviews were not written by the marketing team for the company in an effort to make their products look good? It's almost too good to be true that a company's product reviews would be nothing but 5-star readings and praise about how blown away the customers were that the product worked wonders for them. If you've ever bought a product online based on these reviews, only to be let down because it failed to live up to the hype and expectations, there's probably a good reason for it. A business's sole purpose is to sell, and they are not above fabricating the truth if it means those tactics are going to boost their sales figures up a notch. Both traditional and social media have had a long history of pulling the strings behind the curtains, and they've been able to get away with it for so long because many of us still fail to see what's happening right in front of our eyes. On some level, we know it's happening, yet we continue to allow it to influence our thoughts and sometimes the decisions that we make. How many times has your perception of a certain group of people changed because of something you read about or watched online or on social media? How many times has your decisions and the lifestyle choices you make changed because you saw something on Facebook that says you shouldn't be doing it? Social media is like an addictive drug that keeps you coming back for more. And what makes it such a dangerous manipulative force to be reckoned with is the fact that it's beginning to require the way our brains are starting to think. Scientists have revealed that our brains are now being triggered in a way that they never have been before in the history of humanity, with MRI scans proving that social media has begun triggering the release of dopamine, the very chemical that makes us feel good in our minds. When this form of manipulation starts to feel good is when we know it's got a stronger hold on us than we would like to admit. Chapter 4. The 7 Strategies to Reading Body Language is much we would like to believe we're doing a pretty good job of masking our true feelings. Little do we realize that our bodies give us away for more than we would like. The silent language of the human physique reveals more about what you're thinking and the way that you're feeling, more than your words ever will. And when what you're saying out loud doesn't match up with what your nonverbal cues are saying, that's when anyone who is paying attention can see that something else is really going on. If you know the clues to look for reading another person's body language, which is very tricky business to begin with, can be powerful. Leverage in your quest to determine who's manipulating you and who's being genuine. Understanding body language cues can be beneficial when you are the one trying to subtly manipulate or persuade another into doing what you need them to do, since you will be fully aware of the signals responsible for giving away your true intentions. However, reading body language is not as easy as we may think. One signal could hold several different meanings, which normally change depending on the context and the other factors, which may have an influence on the way that person is feeling. For example, you could assume that a person who has their arms crossed in front of their chest while talking to you is either annoyed or closed off. But if they were in an environment which they were feeling particularly cold, they could simply be crossing their arms in an attempt to stay warm. And that's it. In a situation like this, the next best thing you can do would be to watch out for the subtle cues, to see if what they are telling you verbally is in sync with what their body is doing. When a mismatch is taking place, that is when you want to start paying more attention. For those who have always been fascinated about what others think and feel, body language is an amazing skill to develop. It can reveal a wealth of hidden information, the innermost secret thoughts that could be running through a person's mind they don't want anyone else to know about. Information that no one except you can detect. Almost like a secret line of communication that's going on between just you and the person you're observing. It is a fascinating subject. Even more so because, admittedly, we have all at one time or another wished that we could read someone else's mind. Well, now there's a way to do exactly that. Except you're not reading just their mind alone, but their entire body. 7 strategies to analyze body language from head to toe. Body language. Quite literally the language of your body. Contrary to what many might believe, the facial expressions are not the only giveaway as to how someone may be feeling. The face, as they say, is only the tip of the iceberg. And beneath the surface lies a lot more to be uncovered. When we communicate, our entire body participates in the process. Every aspect of your physical and mental state is contributing to what's going on. But the parts that you are conscious of, and the ones you are not conscious of. There was an interesting UCLA research conducted that revealed how only 7% of human communication takes place verbally. That means the words that we think contribute to most of the way we communicate actually matter less than we think, especially when 55% of our communication, according to the research, comes from our body language, while the remaining 38% is based on the tone of voice that we use, which means that if you could learn to decipher that 55% that goes unspoken, you are going to have a significant advantage over everyone else when it comes to interpersonal communication. Talent Smart, a premier provider of emotional intelligence resources, conducted a test which involved approximately more than 1 million people. The results from those findings were intriguing, revealing that those who fell with the ranks of the upper echelons where the top performers resided were made of those who had high levels of emotional intelligence, 90% of them to be precise. Among the many key skills that landed them in that position was the knowledge that they had to understand, decipher, and read all the unspoken cues and signals that take place during the communication process, since they knew how to read these clues appropriately. Before you begin jumping into the 7 strategies to analyze people and read body language from head to toe, There's one thing that you need to keep in mind. Avoid focusing too hard to looking for cues. That you become too intense and analytical. Remember, your body language can give you away. As much as everyone else. Stay calm and relaxed. Be natural and simply observe. Without being too critical. And overthinking all the cues you're receiving. To decipher the secret emotions that others are keeping. Hidden here are the 7 strategies you want to employ. Strategy 1: Appearance. A person's appearance is perhaps the most obvious giveaway and immediate clue you want to pay attention to when you meet them. Do they have a power suit on with freshly shined shoes? Are they dressed for success? Ready to make a powerful impression? Are they dressed for casual comfort? Indicating they feel relaxed and comfortable. Are they dressed seductively on a first date? Purposely trying to give your attention. Do they have an accessory on them? Which indicates they might be religious. Like a cross pendant perhaps. There's a lot you can take away from there by just observing the way they look. Strategy 2: Posture. Is the person you're talking to holding their head up high in confidence? Or are their shoulders slightly hunched? Indicating that they might be feeling insecure or uncomfortable. Are they walking in a way which might indicate they're feeling indecisive when gathered in a crowded room? Who are strutting about with their chest puffed out, making it known they've got confidence and perhaps a big ego to accompany that. What about the person that is trying to hide away in the corner, hoping to blend in, or that no one would notice them in a conversation? Observe whether the person is leaning towards you or trying to distance themselves from you. In general, we tend to subconsciously lean towards a person if we like them or are comfortable in their presence, and we try to place some distance when we don't like someone. Crossing the arms in front of the chest is the easiest body posture to spot, but the toes should be paid attention to as well. If you notice someone's toes or the top of their leg pointing towards you, that's an indication that they feel comfortable around you. Besides watching for the way that they sit or stand, keep an eye out for hand placement when you're trying to read body language. Someone who has their hands either in their pockets, placed behind their back, or in their laps could suggest that there's something they're trying to keep hidden. Strategy 3: Out of all the other physical parts of the human body, nothing gives away how a person is feeling more than their facial expressions. The emotions which are etched across our faces are more powerful than anything we could say. The deep frown that creases the pursed-in lips, the crinkles around the eyes that often accompany a genuine smile, a clenched jaw. These are all indicators that signal the emotions which could be coursing through a person's body at the time you observe them. And if there ever was a place where you looked for mismatched cues and signals, the facial expressions would be it. A verbal yes which is accompanied by pursed lips, a clenched jaw, and a subtle frown between the brows sends a clear signal about how reluctant and unhappy this person is about having to say yes. A smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes and make it crinkle in the way that only a real smile could let you know that this person is plastering on a fake smile on their face for good measure, when in reality they wouldn't be smiling at all if they could get away with it. Strategy 4: Eyes. How often have you heard the phrase, "Look me in the eye and tell me the truth"? We operate based on the assumption that when a person is lying, it becomes harder for them to maintain eye contact. There is some truth to that to a certain extent, but skillful liars who want to purposely cover up the lies that they tell will deliberately maintain eye contact, but this is also where they tend to slip up and the most. By overcompensating for the fact that they're lying. By holding onto eye contact. For longer than they need to. Until it becomes uncomfortable. On average, a person will maintain eye contact for anywhere from 7 to 10 seconds. Slightly longer. If they were listening intently to the speaker. When a person is staring at you with a gaze that makes you uncomfortable, especially if it is accompanied by barely any blinking and perfectly still body positions, that's your cue that something might not be right. And this person could be lying to your face. Strategy 5. Tone. Remember the other 38%. That comes from the tone of voice being used. That's strategy number 4. To help you get a read on how to analyze the person in front of you. The tone and general volume that is being used during a conversation can provide an insight into a person's emotions. Is the tone being used soothing, low, and comforting, making you feel completely relaxed and comfortable talking to this person? Or is it short, sharp, abrasive, and clipped, which then makes you feel decidedly uncomfortable because it's giving you the impression that this person is less than thrilled to be having a conversation with you? The tone and sound frequencies that we use to convey speech creates vibrations, and the tone that a person uses has a way of affecting the way that you feel, even though you may not be thinking twice about it. Much like the facial expression. If some said yes, but it was accompanied by a clip, short tone, you know that yes is not the real answer that they wanted to give. It all. Strategy 6. Torso. We've always been told to stand up straight. Keep our back straight. Stand tall and maintain good posture. There's a good reason for that advice. Not only is it good for your posture in general, but it signals to others that you're feeling confident and in control. A highly emotional person would have a hard time thinking straight, let alone be focused on standing up straight. If you observe someone who happens to have a chronically saggy posture, accompanied by other indicators that they are feeling uncomfortable when in the presence of others, it is a pretty good indication that they are suffering from low self-esteem. Hunched shoulders are a classic sign. When someone prefers to avoid attention. Strategy 7. Legs. The way a person's legs are positioned when they're either standing or sitting down is important indicators as to what they're thinking and feeling. Having them tightly crossed while they're sitting down indicates that feeling closed off towards the other person when a person is not feeling particularly comfortable, relaxed, or at ease during a conversation. It tends to show. For example, if a woman is wearing a skirt that perhaps turned out to be a little shorter than she anticipated when she sat down, being worried about a possible wardrobe malfunction is going to translate over into the rest of her body language, because that's what her mind is preoccupied with. The conversation can rapidly deteriorate when our apparent discomfort becomes obvious, and if the other people who are present during the conversation misread the signals. People who deal with anxiety can unconsciously translate these messages through their feet in the form of foot tapping or leg shaking, which sends a very loud and clear message to everyone else around them that they're either feeling anxious, irritated, or both. Given that a person's legs are the largest limbs we have, it's pretty hard not to notice when excessive movement is taking place. Besides using your eyes to watch for all the clues you're trying to spot, there's another thing you need to rely on when it comes to accurately reading body language: your intuition. Listen to your gut feeling and what it's trying to tell you, even as you're trying to listen to your head. There's more to understanding another than relying on just logical intuition, and empathy will take you even deeper into their story. That what your eyes are letting you see. One of the core skills possessed by those with high levels of emotional intelligence is the ability to empathize with others, to sense the emotional energy that is being emitted, and assess what's going on using their intuition. The subtle energy cues can be a strong indicator of a person's personality. Being around positive, optimistic people lifts your spirits, improves your happiness and overall mood, while being around manipulative and negative individuals leaves you to feel drained and tired. The emotional energy that is. Strategy 7's legs. The way a person's legs are positioned when they're either standing or sitting down is important indicators as to what they're thinking and feeling. Having them tightly crossed while they're sitting down indicates that feeling closed off towards the other person. When a person is not feeling particularly comfortable, relaxed, or at ease during a conversation, it tends to show. For example, if a woman is wearing a skirt that perhaps turned out to be a little shorter than she anticipated when she sat down, being worried about a possible wardrobe malfunction is going to translate over into the rest of her body language, because that's what her mind is preoccupied with. The conversation can rapidly deteriorate when our apparent discomfort becomes obvious, and if the other people who are present during the conversation misread the signals. People who deal with anxiety can unconsciously translate these messages through their feet in the form of foot tapping or leg shaking, which sends a very loud and clear message to everyone else around them that they're either feeling anxious, irritated, or both. Given that a person's legs are the largest limbs we have, it's pretty hard not to notice when excessive movement is taking place. Besides using your eyes to watch for all the clues you're trying to spot, there's another thing you need to rely on when it comes to accurately reading body language: your intuition. Listen to your gut feeling and what it's trying to tell you, even as you're trying to listen to your head. There's more to understanding another than relying on just logical intuition, and empathy will take you even deeper into their story. That what your eyes are letting you see. One of the core skills possessed by those with high levels of emotional intelligence is the ability to empathize with others, to sense the emotional energy that is being emitted, and assess what's going on using their intuition. The subtle energy cues can be a strong indicator of a person's personality. Being around positive, optimistic people lifts your spirits, improves your happiness and overall mood, while being around manipulative and negative individuals leaves you to feel drained and tired. The emotional energy that is emitted often gets little attention, but it is actually among the indicators that you could use to get a read on what someone's personality might be. If you've ever been around someone who just seems to have a dark cloud hanging over them, no matter where they go or what they do, that could be the clue you need. That lets you know this person is someone who's got a strong negative perception, or that they could be of a manipulative nature. Other body language indicators to look out for. There's a myriad of ways to gauge body language that extends beyond the main 7 strategies that were mentioned above. People are complex creatures with interesting personalities, and like a good book, it gets more interesting with every turn of the page, especially when more clues are untraveled along the way. The deeper you look, Other body language indicators to look out for when you're trying to analyze someone are the handshake. Nothing like a good, strong, firm handshake to let you know when someone is feeling comfortable and confident. But what if the handshake was the opposite though? Limp, reluctant, and almost like they can't wait to release your hand as soon as they touch it. While it doesn't necessarily have to mean anything specific, a less than firm handshake could simply indicate that the person is lacking self-confidence, feeling uncomfortable, is not committal, timid, or is an introvert by nature. Cold and clammy hands, on the other hand, could signal that the person is feeling anxious and nervous, as we all tend to sweat a little bit when we've got those butterflies in our stomach. The micro-expressions. Strategy number 3 focuses on the more obvious facial expressions that take place during the communication process. But there is another aspect to what psychologists refer to as display rules, which play a very vital role when it comes to letting others know just how you feel, perhaps even what you're thinking. These very tiny facial movements are known as microexpressions, and they tend to concentrate on the areas specifically around the mouth and the eyes. These microexpressions, along with the rest of your facial expressions, can completely contradict what you're saying, and anyone who is skilled at reading nonverbal cues will be able to pick up on this immediately. A person may be under the impression they're doing a good job of concealing the fear that they have when they're trying to impress the person they're talking to, but the ever so slight pullback of the muscles around the mouth area will give away just how anxious they feel on the inside. The dangerous thing about microexpressions is that they don't just happen when a person is feeling nervous or anxious. They also take place when someone is lying. Hiding a little white lie is not so easy when your little facial muscles are giving you away. Raising eyebrows. There are only 3 main reasons that would make someone raise their eyebrows. They either feel surprised, afraid, or worried the next time you are in a relaxed and casual conversation with a friend. Try raising your eyebrows and see if it's easy to do. You might come off looking strange at best when someone is talking to you and the conversation doesn't involve a topic that would either cause fear, surprise, or worry, yet they have their eyebrows raised. Keep your antennas up, because something else could be going on beneath the surface. The chin and the neck. Yes, even your chin and neck have their own secret language that they are trying to tell the rest of the world, while you remain completely unaware, unless you make a conscious effort to concentrate on these 2 areas and what they are doing. When you are having a conversation, if your chin jets out in front of you, others might get the impression that you are either somewhat stubborn or obstinate. Even the way you hold your neck around others lets them know how you are feeling on the inside. Shy introverts, who are obviously uncomfortable being in a large group of people, tend to tuck their chin under, so their eyes are fixed on the floor or avoiding eye contact. Whereas those who are confident and poised tend to have their neck straight up and held high. The arm cross. We already know the context does have a role to play in the crossing of the arms. But generally, if you're crossing your arms during a negotiation, for example, the signal you're giving off is that you're feeling closed off to what the other person is saying, even if they've got a smile on their face and engage pleasantly enough in the conversation while they're doing it. How they really feel when their arms are crossed in front of them is they're feeling emotionally, physically, and mentally closed off to whomever they may be speaking to, and what's being said to them. Most of the time, this gesture is done so unintentionally that it makes it the most revealing indicator of all. Gerard Nierenberg and Henry Calero recorded more than 2,000 negotiations as part of the research for their book, How to Read a Person Like a Book. Not one of those negotiations resulted in an agreement. If one party's had their legs or arms crossed during the negotiation, excessive nodding, at the risk of looking like a bobblehead. The only reason someone might be nodding excessively when you speak to them is if they were either concerned about what you thought of them, or if they are worried you might be doubting their ability to keep up with your instructions. Tightly clenched jaw. The only time someone's jaw would be tightly clenched during a conversation is if they were feeling stressed. If you notice that, the words they tell you might make it sound like they're okay with an idea, but their jaws are clenched while they're saying it. That's the signal you need. That tells you they're not as okay with the idea as they're leading you to believe. The feet. Another part of your body which could get you into trouble by sending mixed messages. When you tap your toes, someone might get the impression that you're either feeling anxious or you're in a hurry to bring the conversation to a close. Tapping your toes when you're trying to get the attention of another is a way of getting them to notice you without interrupting a conversation that they might be having. Toe tapping is a way of signaling when you're feeling pressed for time without having to spell it out directly, because you don't want to come off sounding rude. There's a reason people tap their toes, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the best form of communication, especially since either way you're going to be perceived as being rude when you continuously tap at someone else. Imagine how it would feel to have someone tapping their toes at you. How to analyze people based on their words, handwriting, environment, and emotions. How effectively you are able to deal with the people around you will greatly depend on your ability to read them. When you develop the ability to understand others and the way that they feel, you are able to tailor and adapt the messages that you communicate to ensure that it is being received in the best possible way. That's what effective communication is about at the end of the day. And the reason why so many people struggle with communication is that they haven't quite mastered the necessary skills needed to analyze the people they're dealing with on a deeper level. Analyzing their words. Body language is one major aspect to look at. Another is through the words that they use. The eyes may be the windows into the soul, but the words being used are the gateway into the mind. The words that are spoken are consciously and carefully chosen, which then makes it a good representation of what's going on in a person's thoughts. We form bonds and connections by listening and understanding what someone else is trying to say, whether they are speaking it or writing it out. In some cases, the words that are spoken are direct reflection on the character of the person in question. And if you know what to listen for, you can increase the probability of determining their personality, thought process, and even behavioral patterns. Mind reading is not magic. It's a skill, and one that has been mastered by those who have trained themselves to look for all the right indicators, one of which is to study the word choice that is being used. Take this simple example. When a friend of yours is telling you that they received another recognition award at the office, the keyword here is another, which is an indication that they want you to know this is not the first time They've received awards and recognition. By deciphering the meaning behind the words, you then know that an appropriate response, in this situation, would be to offer them congratulatory praise for their accomplishments, which is what they secretly wanted. When they told you the news, you could even catch someone in a lie, if you know the right words to look out for. However, you need to be careful about considering the context. And remember that verbal cues are not always entirely 100% foolproof. The general indicators you would watch for that might tip you off as to whether someone is lying include repeating your question back to you. They could be playing for time to make up a believable story. When they add qualifiers to their sentences, such as to the best of my knowledge, avoiding the use of the word I to avoid being implicated, could signal that they're not being entirely honest. Using the present tense to talk about events which have already happened. Some people use more formal speech when they tell a lie. If someone is omitting their contractions too much, that could a clue to keep an eye out for. Some liars might turn to use softer words to cushion the deed that has been done. Instead of using the word steal, for example, what they might say instead is borrow. In the Pirates of the Caribbean movie, Captain Jack Sparrow infamously chose to save borrowed without permission, to avoid outwardly admitting that he stole a ship. Another way to analyze when a person has got something to hide with their words is by paying attention to the tone of voice and the speed at which they are talking. The indicators that give away something more might be going on underneath the surface, or anxious, speaking far too slowly, which might indicate they're feeling down, depressed, or not in the right mood to have an engaging conversation. Sighing is a sign of frustration or sadness, sometimes even tiredness. A sudden change in the pitch and tone of the voice indicates a lie trying to stay hidden. A repetitious tone of voice might indicate insincerity in a romantic relationship. Men have been knowing to change the tone of their voice to signal when they're interested in a woman. Analyzing their handwriting. The analysis of a person's handwriting is referred to as graphology. And according to the science of this subject, the way that we craft our words and our letters can indicate over 5,000 types of personality traits. Graphologist Kathy McKnight has her students write out the sentence, "She sells seashells by the seashore," when she introduces them to this field. And she gets them to write it out in a cursive format. There's a reason why she specifies cursive writing. And that's because it provides graphologists with a better opportunity to analyze an individual's personality. Everyone has their own unique way of writing, which is often just as unique as their personalities. While graphology can provide a fun way of trying to take a guess at what someone's personality might be like, it is not the most accurate measure out there. Unlike reading body language cues, for example, it may not be the most accurate, but it can still reveal some interesting clues about a person. When you're trying to gauge them just based on their handwriting alone, bigger personalities tend to write in larger letters, while shy, introverted individuals prefer smaller print. As for those who write in between, well, the average-sized handwriting is often an indication that you have a stronger ability to concentrate and focus on the tasks that you do. Other interesting clues to look for when you're trying to practice some graphology techniques of your own include: the more the person might be someone who enjoys their independence and freedom. Those who prefer to write letters and words which are squeezed closer together generally preferred the company of others. If you've written out your sentences in a manner where the words seem to be completely crammed together, an analysis of that type of handwriting Might suggest your personality tends to be more intrusive. Your writing slants. If your handwriting tends to slant towards the right, you could be someone who likes meeting new people. To the left indicates that you prefer to work alone, and that you're introspective and reserved in nature. The pen pressure used. Did you know that even the kind of pressure applied when you're writing with your pen gives away clues about your personality? Writing with pressure might suggest that you're feeling tense, stressed, or even angry. Moderately applied pressure, on the other hand, is an indication of commitment. According to graphology, those with the softest touch tend to be the ones who are most sensitive and empathetic towards others. But according to a National Pen Company study, soft pressure could also indicate that the person lacks vitality. The way you dot your I. If the dot in your I tends to be higher up on the page, handwriting experts say that your personality might be one with an active imagination. An I that is closely dotted, on the other hand, is an indication of a detail-oriented and organized personality. If your I tends to slant towards the left, you could be a procrastinator. And if you dot your I with a little circle at the top, you're playful or childlike at heart. Signature legibility. Those who are confident, strong, and comfortable in their own skin tends to have the most legible kind of signature. A signature that is hard to read often belongs to someone who prefers their privacy. Letter-shaped. Intelligent people tend to have letters which are more pointed, while rounded letters tend to indicate a more artistic and creative personality. The speed. Even the speed at which you write means something. Those who are impatient and don't like wasting precious time tend to write faster, while the more self-reliant and methodical individuals take their time writing down the words they want to say. Connect or disconnect. The Pen Warehouse believes that those who are logical, when it comes to making their decisions, tend to write letters which are connected together. Disconnected letters are an approach. The more impulsive and imaginative tend to write with the baseline. This one is easy to read. If the sentence is being written on line paper, observe the angle of the sentences. If the writing has more of an upward slant to it, that means the person is either in an optimistic or happy mood, while a downward slant, on the other hand, could be an indication of fatigue or discouragement. Getting caught in a lie. According to handwriting experts, when a person is lying, the slant of their handwriting tends to change dramatically. Analyze the environment. Humans have always been sensitive to their surroundings, even from the time when our ancestors used to roam wild hunting for food. As evolved as we have become, there still exists within all of us an innate sense of awareness about our surroundings, which is why we tend to look for environments with certain types of qualities that we're comfortable with. A classic example is when you're looking for a home to either rent or buy. Environment plays a big factor in your decision, and the preferences you have for the kind of environment you want will determine your decision to purchase or rent the home you're inspecting. Besides security and safety, other qualities which influence our decisions include the physical attributes of the environment. Almost everyone looks for an environment which is comforting, both physically and emotionally. Returning home after a long day at the office is emotionally comforting, because this is where you feel you can finally relax and be yourself. The environment can have a significant impact on the way a person reacts and responds. Put a person in an environment that they're not comfortable in, and their reactions are almost immediate. At times, depending on the circumstances, A claustrophobic person, for example, would immediately start displaying signs of discomfort, anxiety, fear, and wanting to escape. Feeling trapped is a smaller confined space. Other ways in which the surroundings can play a role in determining a person's response includes facilitating or discouraging interactions. An encouraging space that is warm and inviting makes you feel more relaxed and comfortable, enough to have an open conversation, influencing your motivation and behavior. An office supply room, which is dusty and crammed full of stuff everywhere you look, will make you want to dump your items in there and leave as soon as possible. A supply room which is neat, organized, clean, tidy, and spacious, on the other hand, makes you comfortable, enough to linger and spend time putting your stuff away, influencing your mood. An environment that is crowded, noisy, and full of distractions can make you feel restless and agitated. Somewhere, you're not likely to want to carry on a conversation because you don't like it, and it's affecting your mood in a negative manner. Given that the nature of the environment can have a big impact on the way a person thinks, feels, and responds, where you are analyzing of their body language takes place is going to be an important factor for consideration. You might not be getting an accurate body language reading if your subject is clearly uncomfortable, not with the topic being discussed, but the surroundings that they find themselves in. Analyzing emotions, developing the necessary empathy to understand and be attuned enough to another's emotional state, can provide you with important intel to help you successfully navigate the relationship. Those who have mastered the art of emotional intelligence have developed their empathic abilities and turned that skill into knowledge that they can use to give them the upper hand in a social situation when attempting to analyze someone's emotions. Here's what you need to keep in mind. Open mind. You need to maintain an open mind and be a blank slate yourself. Having preconceived notions or prejudice is only going to cloud your judgment, and it could lead you to misread the situation. Think big picture. Instead of focusing on every single body language gesture that's taking place, think of the bigger picture and do a comprehensive bodily scan instead, putting all your information together before drawing any conclusions. The benefit of the doubt. Try to give someone the benefit of the doubt before you make assumptions about the emotions that they are feeling. Remember to observe the context and the environment too, since this could be having an impact on their emotional state. If you're still unsure about the signals you're getting based on their facial and body cues, consider asking them instead if everything is all right. How to tell when someone is insecure in a business deal or any kind of negotiation for that matter. Swooping into when the deal depends not only on your negotiation skills and the talking points you've prepared, but on your ability to analyze when that person is insecure or indecisive, so you can make your move and secure your win. Being able to spot insecurities can be advantageous in a negotiation, because all you need to do from there to secure the odds in your favor is to say the right things that resonate with your subject, enough to convince them to jump the fence and come over to your side. Here are signs you want to keep a lookout for that could give you some indication that the person is feeling indecisive or insecure about their decisions. They don't seem settled with the decision that they are leaning towards at the moment. They keep asking the same question repeatedly, almost as if they are having a hard time accepting the answers they are being given. They reject your initial suggestion but then come back and circle around it again. They want you to think several times, or even what you think they should do. They might apologize for being indecisive and unable to make a decision just yet. They're worried about offending you or making you angry with their decision. They express concern about not knowing what the right thing to do is. They worry if the decision they make is going to reflect badly on them. They feel uncomfortable if they think they are being ganged up on and pressured into making a decision. They might become defensive if they feel they are being attacked. They will attempt to impress you, but seem nervous about it, and the insecurity shows through the tone of their voice. They are concerned about not having the support that they need. They are too concerned about what others might think. They have a tendency to strive for perfection. Chapter 5, Dealing with the Manipulators in Your Life. We have all been guilty of resorting to manipulation at one time or another get something we wanted. It is almost impossible to never speak without some kind of agenda. Every now and then, whenever we need a favor from a friend, we might resort of slight manipulation or persuasion to try and get them to go along with what we need them to do. When we need a colleague of work to go along with our agenda, we might have to resort to manipulation or coercion to get them to comply. Leaders, managers, and supervisors rely on some form of manipulation techniques to either inspire or play on your emotions and fears, to get you to listen and go along with their instructions. Manipulation, despite the negative association with this term, is all around us. You're either being manipulated or you're the one doing the manipulating. Manipulators, as we know by now, will always want to be in control, to place themselves above you and everyone else around them, to feel superior, to be the one who is pulling all the strings and getting everyone else to dance to the beat of their drum. To achieve this, they will do anything and everything they can to try and rattle your confidence, making you second-guess yourself. You might have even done something like this before. Even if you don't necessarily see yourself as a manipulator. Have you ever told a new colleague at work who was laughing and joking around as they tried to get to know everyone to take a step back and tone it down? Perhaps you felt a little jealous that everyone was starting to warm up to the new colleagues so quickly, and you didn't like feeling your popularity might be threatened. That colleague might have been taken aback by this sudden remark, and what you would have done is to plant a little seed of doubt in their mind that perhaps their behavior was not as acceptable as they thought it was. Or perhaps there was a colleague whom you were in danger of losing the promotion to, and to throw them off their game, you suddenly point out all the mistakes they made while playing on their insecurities. Maybe you've even had this done to you, where someone made a remark that completely caught you off guard, made you feel stupid and doubt your own abilities. Manipulators want everyone around them to feel like they are never good enough. What's worse is that most of us already feel inadequate to begin with, and we are concerned that other people might notice it too. In fact, this feeling has become so common, with research showing that 70% of the population experiencing this feeling that it has its own term, imposter syndrome. Those who suffer from this syndrome constantly find themselves feeling inadequate or feeling like a failure. According to the California Institute of Technology, no matter how much evidence there is to indicate their success, those dealing with imposter syndrome continue to experience self-doubt and believe they are intellectual frauds. Another study revealed Individuals who were dealing with this syndrome on a frequent basis often performed poorly and were in general a lot more anxious than those who dealt with imposter syndrome less frequently. Imposter syndrome sufferers also experienced a greater, more significant loss of self-esteem after what they perceive to be a failure. This feeling often hits them harder than anyone else, and several studies have indicated a strong correlation between imposter syndrome and feelings of shame, humiliation, and self-sabotage. The imposter syndrome individuals are exactly the type of people that manipulators love to target the most. You become easy targets for them to prey on when they can tap into this psychological fear, and they'll make your insecurities worse by continually questioning your actions in a way that makes you doubt your self-worth. They are doing this on purpose to keep you as unfocused and off-balanced as possible, making it easier for them to strike when the time is right and take what they want from you. Dealing with the manipulators in your life. Narcissists, emotional abusers, covert aggressive manipulators. They are everywhere. And if you are tired of being a victim of their mind games, it is time to put a stop to the control that they have over you once and for all. Whether they are your parents, siblings, uncles, aunts, friends, colleagues, bosses, supervisors, or clients, no one has a right to manipulate and take advantage of your insecurities. No one has the right to make you feel bad about yourself, nor should they force you to do something you don't want to do. A relationship with a manipulator can go on for years, especially if they're within your own family. It's easier to cut ties with the manipulators you're not related to. But what do you do if they might be your own parents or siblings, or friends whom you've grown up with and known your entire life? The first step towards learning how to deal with these individuals is to remember your fundamental rights. You always have a right to be respected. Express emotions. Express opinions. Express desires. Establish priorities. Say no without guilt. Get what you pay for. Take action to protect and defend yourself against any form of moral, emotional, or physical harm. Do what is in line with your happiness. Your fundamental rights. These are the fundamental rights which belong to all of us, and no one has any right to disregard, to disrespect your rights. When dealing with manipulators, remembering these rights will help you steel your determination to fight off their attacks. Remember that you are responsible for your own life and your happiness, and those two things should never be put in the hands of someone else, especially if that person happens to be a manipulator. The next steps that need to be taken to manage the manipulators in your life are to stay away from them. It is the only way to minimize the influence they have over you. If they're not your immediate family members, consider staying away from them entirely, even cutting ties with them if you can, because unless they change their ways, it is unlikely the relationship is ever going to do you any food. If the manipulators are your family members, you may not be able to cut ties with them entirely, but you can minimize the contact time you get with them. Avoid spending any alone time with them. Keep yourself too busy to have a conversation for too long, and be prudent with how much time you allow yourself to spend with them. Don't forget about your fundamental rights to start defending yourself against their bullying. Some manipulators will resort to bullying if they know their targets are weaker than they are. Manipulators whose personalities fall within those of the dark triad might even take pleasure from trying to scar their victims, mentally and emotionally, relishing in the power that they feel when they know They have struck fear in the hearts of others. Defend yourself against their intimidation by remembering that the manipulator is clinging to what they believe are your weaknesses. If you give in to what they want and play their game, you are reinforcing their belief that they are right. When you choose to stand up for yourself and confront them, instead they'll tend to back away, since most manipulators tend to be cowards. Underneath all that bravado, they'll never put themselves in a position where others can see their true colors, to not let them pressure you. Even if you do feel pressured to make a decision, don't let them know it. Be firm, stand your ground, and say firmly, "I'll need some time to think about it." Whenever you start to feel the pressure building up within you, take a deep breath and remind yourself, no one has the right to force you into doing something you don't want to do. You have every right to say no if you want to, and you don't have to feel guilty about it. People pleasers often struggle with this step because of the strong desire they have to avoid upsetting anyone, even if they know full well they're being taken advantage of. But you must stand your ground and let them manipulate in. Know once and for all that they cannot pressure and push you around like your opinions don't count for something. To learn how to say no. It's not the most pleasant feeling in the world to have to say no, but as guilty as you feel about it, your happiness and your needs must come first. You do not owe the manipulator anything, and they have no right to expect you to bend to their will. You are not purposely upsetting anyone. When you learn to say no, you are respecting yourself and setting your own limits. Learning to say no is how you stand up for yourself, to remind yourself that you're not going to be pushed around anymore. And saying no is within your rights if it doesn't align with your happiness. To point out the consequences. When you can see that the manipulator is putting you in a situation where you are feeling verbally and emotionally abused, let the manipulator know you are aware of this by pointing out the potential consequences of what they are trying to do, putting yourself one step ahead of them by letting them know you're fully aware of the consequences will take them by surprise and signal to them that you are not someone to be messed with. You will force them to reassess their strategies and think twice about trying to take advantage of you in the future. When they know you're not so easily misled, do not expect anything from them, especially if you're expecting them to see things from your point of view. That's not going to happen, since most manipulators tend to be self-absorbed individuals, concerned about only their own needs and interest. They care little for the feelings or opinions of others, and they're certainly not going to go out of their way to try and see things from your perspective. They lack empathy and will never be able to see beyond their own selfish desires. So if you expect them to change their tune, you're only setting yourself up for frustration. Never expect them to change their ways. Convince them to change their ways or even try to fix them. Since 99.9% of the time that's not going to happen. A manipulator will only change if they want to mend their ways, not because someone else told them to do it. To diffuse and to exit. There are only two goals to keep in mind when you find yourself in a confrontational situation with a manipulator. You need to diffuse the situation and then exit it, even if the exit means putting an abrupt stop to the conversation or ending a friendship entirely. The more you continue to engage with the manipulator, the more they'll try to rile you up by insulting you, arguing with you, accusing you of things you never did, just to get a rise out of you, trying to get you to lose your temper, and even push your buttons, until you become overly emotional and prone to doing something you might regret. To accept your own skills. Dealing with a manipulator requires a certain level of emotional intelligence to be able to successfully fend them off. Patience, maturity, discipline, self-control, and self-regulation. And the tools that you need to keep you from losing your temper or reacting in a way that you might regret. Having an awareness about your own skills and what you're capable of can help you stand your ground and keep things from escalating out of control. For example, if you think you might not be emotionally resilient or confident enough just yet to stand your ground against the manipulator, enlist the help of a trusted friend to be the mediator in the situation. If you are more comfortable sending a professional email rather than confront the person hit on, it is okay to send an email too. If this gives you more confidence, might be a good idea in some cases to have black and white proof of your correspondence, since some manipulators will try to disarm you and make you doubt yourself by denying what you've said. If they know there's no way you can prove it, don't feel bad about having to ask for help if you need it. Building the necessary resilience and emotional intelligence to stand up to a domineering personality can take time. You will get there eventually. And until then, knowing your own strengths and current skill level will help you make the most of what you have. To determine your boundaries for the relationships that you can't quite eliminate from your life entirely, the next best thing you can do is to refrain your boundary levels, as hard as it may be, to accept that your loved one could be capable of such a thing. You need to come to terms with it, so you can then begin working on altering your expectations and setting the boundaries that you need to start protecting yourself. Take small steps toward slowly enforcing these boundaries, allowing it to happen gradually over time, while you build up your confidence in the process. If they were someone whom you previously went to for advice, start phasing that out by turning to someone else for advice instead. If they were someone whom you previously went to for validation, stop actively seeking it out or asking them for their opinion. They might continue to offer it anyway, since they are so used to doing it. And when they do, just thank them and leave it at that. You don't have to follow their advice any longer. Let it be a case of in one ear and out the other. Be subtle about setting your boundaries by doing this in smaller steps. If you want to avoid a confrontation or having to deal with the manipulator demanding why you're setting boundaries against them, how to invalidate a conversation you don't want to deal with. When you sit there listening to a conversation you don't necessarily want to be a part of, you are validating the other person. You are telling them that they are important enough to demand your time and attention, that they are important enough for you to see them, hear them, understand them, and care about them. It's fine when it is someone you care about. But if the conversation is taking place with a manipulator, then validating them is the last thing that you want to do. Invalidation is considered a form of emotional abuse. And what's dangerous about it is how subtle and even unintentional this type of abuse can be. Manipulators use invalidation on their targets all the time by denying their emotions and feelings, making them feel frustrated in the process. This is what you're now about to do to a manipulator. Not to invalidate the conversation with the intent to emotionally abuse them, but to invalidate the conversation so they have no power over you. Let's get some clarity over what the term invalidate here means. Whenever you invalidate a person, what you are doing is basically making them feel like you either don't understand them and their feelings, or that you do understand Them and you are simply choosing not to care anyway. Exactly the same kind of tactics a manipulator tries to use on you. Invalidating a conversation can happen in several subtle ways, which include being controlling. The manipulators we use. Controlling invalidation of the ones who are confident that there is the right way to do things and they will have no problems butting in, trying to intervene and get others to see the error of their ways. They might even tell you, "I write that this is how things should be done." And controlling invalidation can be seen in several everyday scenarios, parenting included. Here's what controlling invalidation might look like. Manipulator, that's not how you do it. Because I've told you it is wrong. My way is the best way to solve the problem. How to invalidate them? I respect that. But I'm confident my solution is going to work just as well. So I'm going to go ahead with it anyway. Nothing drives a manipulator up the wall than to see you go against what they want, especially since they're expecting you to listen anyway, because they told you so. Being inattentive, not paying attention to the conversation, makes the speaker feel you guess it like they don't matter, or like what they have to say isn't important enough to be worth your time. Here's an example of how you might use this technique against the manipulator. Manipulator, I am so frustrated that nobody helps me around the office when all I do is go out of my way to try and help everyone else when they need it. Let's get some clarity over what the term invalidate here means. Whenever you invalidate a person, what you are doing is basically making them feel like you either don't understand them and their feelings, or that you do understand them and you are simply choosing not to care anyway. Exactly the same kind of tactics a manipulator tries to use on you. Invalidating a conversation can happen in several subtle ways, which include being controlling. The manipulators who use controlling invalidation are the ones who are confident that theirs is the right way to do things, and they will have no problems butting in, trying to intervene and get others to see the error of their ways. They might even tell you, "I write that this is how things should be done." And controlling invalidation can be seen in several everyday scenarios, parenting included. Here's what controlling invalidation might look. Manipulator, that's not how you do it. Because I've told you it is wrong. My way is the best way to solve the problem. How to invalidate them? I respect that. But I'm confident my solution is going to work just as well. So I'm going to go ahead with it anyway. Nothing drives a manipulator up the wall than to see you go against what they want, especially since they're expecting you to listen anyway, because they told you so. Being inattentive, not paying attention to the conversation, makes the speaker feel you guess it like they don't matter, or like what they have to say isn't important enough to be worth your time. Here's an example of how you might use this technique against the manipulator. I am so frustrated that nobody helps me around the office when all I do is go out of my way to try and help everyone else when they need it. How you would invalidate them? The progress on the group project is going really great, don't you think? By not acknowledging what they are trying to do, you are invalidating their tactics and letting them know you are aware of what they are trying to do, and you are choosing not to go along with it anyway. Being belligerent by rebutting rather than listening, you are invalidating the manipulators' efforts and trying to get you to see things their way. Here is an example of what this technique might look like. Manipulator: I feel like you are being rude and dismissing my idea, when I have clearly told you this is how it should be done. How you would invalidate them? With all due respect, your idea was an inappropriate solution to this situation. When we both know there are more effective ways to handle this, being belligerent lets them know you are not afraid to make your opinions known, and that you are willing to refute them if it is the right thing to do. Being judgmental, the judgmental manipulator will minimize or downplay what you think is important because they don't feel it's important or beneficial to them. In a relationship, being judgmental and invalidating your partner's feelings can cause a disconnect, making you feel as if your interests take a back seat to that of your partner's. Somehow you always find yourself doing what they want, while they hardly ever entertain what you want to do. Why don't we go out for a hike this weekend? I haven't done that in a while, and I thought it might be fun for us to spend some time together outdoors. Manipulator: nope, I'm not interested. I'm going to stay in this weekend and binge watch my favorite Netflix series. You can join me. That's much better than going on some boring hike you hardly ever spend time doing. Watching my favorite show with me. How to invalidate them? That's fine, I'm going to go for a hike then. See you later. They'll be fully expecting you to feel guilty enough to do what they want to do. And when you do the exact opposite, they'll be frustrated at your invalidation of their manipulative tactics. Being emotional. A classic manipulative move is to invalidate someone else's emotions as it matters less than yours. If you've ever dealt with someone who feels entitled to disagree with you or tell you what the appropriate way to react should be, that person could be a manipulator. I'm feeling really down about not getting the promotion I was hoping for. Manipulator: why are you sad about that? You should be happy you even have a job. You're overreacting as usual. You need to get over it. How to invalidate them? Because I worked hard for it, and I deserve to be recognized for my efforts and contribution. I have a right to be upset about it. This was something I was really looking forward to. By standing up for yourself and acknowledging that your feelings matter, you are taking control away from the manipulator. Instead of allowing them to invalidate your feelings and emotions, you're taking a stand for yourself and invalidating their opinions. By letting them know how you feel matters just as much as how they feel. Practical tips you can apply every day to keep manipulation at bay. Toxic relationships are never easy to deal with, even more so when it's nearly impossible to completely cut ties with the relationship that is dragging you down. As hard as it is to cut ties with the one who is manipulating you, for some it can be even harder to accept a reality that you've been a victim of manipulation and opening their eyes to just how damaging this toxic person has been on their life. Initially, it can be hard to determine whether you're being taken advantage of or not. But if the same pattern of behavior keeps on happening over and over again, it's a sure sign that manipulation is taking place. Some relationships can be heartbreaking to let go of. They hurt more than others, and we try to find reasons to hold on to it, even when we know that we shouldn't. If you're struggling with letting go, ask yourself this one simple question. Does this person know that they are taking advantage of you? Most of the time the answer is going to be yes. They knew and they did it anyway because they chose to. Prying yourself away from the manipulator's grasp can be challenging, but it can be done if you take the necessary steps to protect yourself, like with the practical tips below that you could use every day to keep your mind and your emotions safe. Keeping close connections you can trust. Keeping in close contact with the family and friends that you can Trust will keep you the manipulator's mind. Control efforts on you down to a minimum. The family and friends you can. Trust will give you the support that you need and strengthen your belief in yourself. So the manipulator has no room to plant their seeds of doubt or shake your confidence. Talk to your friends and family. Another reason to never allow the manipulator to sway you into disconnecting from the ones you love and trust is that you can always trust them to have your best interest at heart. The ones who love you will always be looking out for your safety. If you're ever unsure about whether you're being subjected to manipulation, talk to them about what's going on and see how they react. Their immediate response, if it is shock and anger, should serve the wake-up call you need that something may not be quite right. Choosing that to tolerate their moods. Manipulators in relationships often sulk or resort to temper tantrums to get things done their way. If you enable them, the only one this kind of behavior is taking an emotional toll on is you. Choose not to tolerate it by walking away from the situation whenever they resort to this kind of behavior. Explain why you're not going to put up with this. And if they refuse to change their ways, it might be time to question if there is any reason to hold on to this relationship for much longer. Ignore them. This is the best practical advice you could apply on yourself. Ignore them because they're not worth wasting your time, effort, and emotions on. When they try to give you advice, ignore them. When they try to tell you what to do, ignore them. And go ahead and do what you wanted to anyway. Manipulators can never be trusted, and they will always try and get you to do their dirty work for them. When you try to hold them accountable, they'll deny all responsibility. They flip-flop, go back and forth, and change their minds as often as they change their clothes. Ignore them and ignore everything they're saying. That's the best thing you could do. Don't try to correct them. You're only sinking deeper into their trap when you do. Remember that they're trying to confuse you enough so you can't see what they're up to when you're an emotional wreck. And every time you try to fix the situation, you are making it too easy for them to twist you around their little finger. They often set these little traps to see how you respond, so they can figure out your triggers and use them to their advantage. Don't engage. Don't respond, and don't try and correct them. It's a game you can never win. Don't doubt yourself. That's exactly what the manipulator wants you to do. Why this is exactly what you shouldn't do. You know yourself better than anyone else ever could, and you shouldn't have to rely on anyone's validation to let you know that you are good enough just the way you are. What separates the successful individuals from everyone else is the fact that they don't base their self-worth on someone else's opinions. They rely on their own judgment. And if they make mistakes along the way, that's okay. They learn from it and get back up again. Believing in yourself can be one of your strongest defenses against the manipulator's attack. Quit trying so hard to fit in with the wrong crowd. If you have to work too hard to fit in with a group of people, they are not the right group for you. Manipulators are charming and popular enough to make you feel a desire to be part of their crowd, and they love feeling in control. By making you work hard to earn their approval, they know that keeping you in this state allows them to get away with more favors, since you'll be more than willing to do what they want just to feel accepted. Don't allow yourself to be subjected to their manipulative ways any longer. If they can't accept you for who you are, don't worry, there is plenty of other people who will. Anytime you have to work too hard to feel accepted, means you're working hard for the wrong kind of people. Turn the tables. Manipulators will constantly try to work against you. They'll befriend your friends and then try to turn them against you. They'll convince you to do most of the work, and then take equal or more credit for behind your back. They'll entice you with the same reward, and watch as you continuously try to chase it. They'll remember all your past mistakes and never miss an opportunity to make you feel bad about it. If the manipulator you're trying to rid yourself of continues to work even harder to make your life a living nightmare, you need to turn the tables on them and strike back. Find what's giving them their support, and then weaken it so the manipulator no longer has a strong enough foothold. This support could be their followers, supporters' subordinates, a skill that they have, or some resource that they might be in control of. Befriend their supports and make them your allies. Make connections with others who have a similar skill, so the manipulator is not the only one who is in control. Turning the tables on them and weakening the hold that they have will end up throwing them off balance, so they no longer focus on trying to dominate your life, but focus instead on trying to reclaim their position in their own circle. Don't compromise. Compromising your own morals and values is one of the many big mistakes you could make. When dealing with a manipulator, you are playing right into their hands when you go against everything you believe and just to do what they want. It is okay if they make you feel bad or guilty about it. Let them do what they want. What's important is that you don't compromise your own happiness, emotions, time, and energy any longer running around in circles trying to accommodate them. Ask yourself this: would they be willing to do the same for you? If the roles were reversed, go back once more to the fundamental rules where you have a right to put your happiness and your needs first. Don't ask for permission. Asking for permission is a hard habit to break. We've been taught to do it ever since we were children, asking our parents for permission whenever we wanted to do something. In school, we had to ask permission from the teachers for the things we needed as adults. We ask permission from our supervisors or managers before we take action. In a relationship, we ask permission from our partners to get their approval before we make a move. Because of this, asking for permission can be a hard habit to break. When you allow the manipulator to be in control, you constantly find yourself seeking approval and asking for permission instead of taking control and making your own decisions. Isn't it time to put a stop to this? After all, this is your life, not theirs. Why should you wait around for their permission to tell you what to do? Have your own purpose. Your purpose is definitely not to do what the manipulator wants you to do. Those operate without a sense of purpose make it easier for themselves to be controlled by those with a stronger will and agenda. That's the reason why manipulators continue to have an influence to this day, because so many people are going around without a sense of purpose, leaving themselves open to being taken advantage of. When you don't have a strong sense of purpose of your own, you are more susceptible to believing what you're told and doing what you're instructed to do, because you don't have that greater purpose to focus on, to base your decisions on. The greater purpose that dictates what you're willing to do and what you're not. It is easy to spot others around you who may not have a strong sense of purpose either. They're the ones who often flit through their life with no real rhyme or reason. They're the ones who work pointless jobs, which either inspire them or fill them with happiness, yet have no real desire to change the situation. They're the ones who spend far too much time focused on empty gossip, and other meaningless information, which serves no real purpose. This lack of direction is what manipulators are just waiting to pounce on. So if you haven't found your sense of purpose yet, it's time to start thinking long and hard about what your purpose should be. Give yourself something concrete to focus on, and you are less likely to fall prey to deception and distraction. Take on new opportunities. New opportunities are all around you. All you need to do is be brave enough to take a chance and a leap of faith. Manipulators want to stop you from taking on new opportunities because they want to tie you down in the same routine. They want you to remain in the same cycle that you are, since this makes the job of maintaining control much easier. That's the reason they sow seeds of self-doubt in your mind, and why they work hard to discourage you from improving yourself or seizing new opportunities. Every time you grow stronger and more confident, you are weakening the hold that they have on you, which is what they are working hard to prevent. They'll try too hard to keep you in your place. They'll even resort to making you feel ashamed at even entertaining the thought of taking on new opportunities to better yourself. Don't let them stop you. And don't let self-doubt get in the way. Even successful people made plenty of mistakes along the way to get to where they are right now. All they did differently from everyone else was to have the courage to take the leap and make a change for the better. Stop being a punching bag. Manipulators will continue to treat you like a punching bag, only if you allow them to do it. Respect yourself enough to stand up and say, "You don't deserve this kind of treatment." Because you don't. Go back to your fundamental rights once again, where you have the right to be respected. Anytime anyone takes advantage of you, then not respecting you, the choice of whether to put up with it or not rests entirely in your hands. People will try to use you, abuse you, and take advantage of you. But you have a choice to say no to all of it. No one has any power to manipulate unless you give them permission. 2. Put a stop to being a punching bag. Start taking accountability for your decisions. And remind yourself you have no reason to feel guilty about standing up to someone who isn't treating you fairly. Manipulators will always try to do everything in their power to seek your confidence and weaken you enough for them to gain control over you. They'll pretend to be concerned about you, or that they only have your best interest in. They'll convince you they want to help, when the truth is the only person they want to help is themselves. And if they have to step on your toes to do it, they will. Once you allow them into your life, they can be hard to get rid of, but it can be done now that you know how. The final key is to never stop working on developing your own confidence. The stronger you are, the less control they have over you. Conclusion. Thanks for making it through to the end of this book. Let's hope it was informative and able to provide you with all of the tools you need to achieve your goals, whatever they may be. Now that you can identify who the manipulators might be in your life, determine indications of being manipulated, and learned about how to deal with them, you can better analyze the relationships around you to make the informed decisions needed in your own life. With a more objective view on things, you can express your feelings, opinions, and desires without feeling guilty, knowing that they are in fact your own. Through evaluating and analyzing the communication cues in your relationships, you can discern and recognize signals of persuasion and manipulation. Once this is clear, you will be able to exercise the right to be treated with respect. You restore to yourself the power and the right to be equal individuals in a communication exchange. In a relationship that has an equal balance of power, you can say no without feeling guilty and can set your priorities according to your own intentions to create a better life or environment for yourself and those you care for. The ability to analyze people's body language and see through manipulative words prevents you from being extorted or unknowingly manipulated. You are more open to opportunities around you and less likely to be influenced and driven by the intention of others. However, being able to identify these tactics mean that you too can use these tricks to manipulate. Be sure to check with your moral compass and constantly be aware of treating every person as an equal individual, deserving of the right to be respected and given the freedom of choice. Finally, if you found this book useful in any way, a review on Amazon is always appreciated. Description: could I be a victim of manipulation? You might be if you were missing out on the signs that signaled when someone was trying to take advantage of you. There are many reasons why people try to manipulate others. Most of the time, people manipulate to get the most out of the relationship, whether through the play of words, body language, or pulling on emotional heartstrings. Manipulators work to control and coerce others to do things for them. Sometimes the act of manipulation can occur right in front of us and we don't even know it. Why? Because we miss the signs, signals, and body language cues that indicate that there might be more to that person than meets the eye. We have all in one way or another been guilty of manipulation, or we've been the victim of a manipulator's underhanded tactics. But what if there was a way to analyze a person's intentions based on body language? There are many aspects that build manipulation. Persuasive words, body language, and tone of voice are all channels to convey or communicate manipulative messages. But is manipulation harmful? Or is it a case of a little harmless? Persuasion won't hurt anyone. Why is manipulation wrong? And what if it is done for the good of the one manipulated? How to analyze people will walk you through what manipulation entails and dive into the dark psychology of the human mind. Learn how to quickly analyze and figure out body language. Quickly give yourself the upper hand. Call out someone's bluff and better analyze the relationships and situations that you are in. And most importantly, learn to differentiate manipulation from persuasion. Looking to better understand the dark psychology of the human mind and how to identify the subtle body language signals all around you. How to analyze people has the answers you seek. Thank you for listening to this book read by me. I recommend you to listen to other books on my channel. Thank you for taking me on this journey with you. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, subscribe, like, and share.